Abby and put him in the back of the car. The lady who married us was named Abby. And, of course, it was a chapel, and so obviously Abbey Chapel Bell. That's how he got his name. And that was, of course, almost 10 years ago, since it was the night of our wedding. Abby is very important to us, and several weeks ago, about a month ago, I guess, almost now, Abby, all of a sudden, almost overnight, lost his weight, got sick, couldn't get up on the couch. It was horrible. Horrible, and we rushed him to the vet here in Pahrump, and the vet said, well, you might want to put him to sleep. It's probably liver failure, and he's not going to come out of it, or it's not very likely at all. Anything can be done. And so we rushed him to Las Vegas, and I held him. My wife drove like a demon, and I held him and sort of cried all the way to Las Vegas, and we got this really, really, really good vet. It's described in the story on the website, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, who for 3 weeks had tubes going into him and medicine and feeding tubes, and it was pathetic. He's all shaved. But somehow, it was a miracle, I believe. Abby's liver turned back on. He went from 20 pounds to about 11 pounds. And his liver suddenly, miraculously turned back on. And so Abby is back with us, albeit looking a little like a French poodle, more than a cat, because he's shaved everywhere, but he's back with us. So that whole story is on the website. It really was a miracle. My wife and I went to the Super Bowl, where I understand we were scanned. Everybody was scanned at the Super Bowl. Isn't that lovely? Big Brother. It was cool, though. We had a lot of fun. And the whole story of the Super Bowl trip is up there. The photographs of NBC this morning, the behind-the-scenes stuff, they had this cool white truck out there with satellite dishes and stuff, and I went out and took photographs of that. That's up on the website. A lot of stuff from the past is up on the website, stuff that you've wanted to see for a long time. And so you've got to get to the website. So I want to thank Keith Rowland, who did a spectacular job of getting it all together. Where do you find it? You find it right now at www.artbell.com. We've got the webcam is back, and I've got a really cool new capture card, a video capture card, which allows larger pictures. So we are sending larger pictures to the website. I'd be interested in your opinion. Now, when you go to the website, just look along the left side, and you'll see all these options. Just place your cursor over them, and the rest will be obvious. Hope it works out okay for the web TV people. We'll see. So, lots of reasons to go up to the brand new website, and of course, we'll be getting more and more material as time goes on, but there's an awful lot of it for you to see right now, and it will help you catch up with what I have been doing. Then after some of the problems were resolved, and it looked as though I was gone fishing retired with not much to do, my wife and I bought an RV. And we had plans to go trekking across the country in our brand new RV, a big 37-foot diesel pusher. Oh boy, did we get it outfitted. I spent a lot of time on that. That was cool, and it was a lot of fun. There's photographs of the RV up there, which now sits out there languishing because we were going to take off before I came back to the air, but of course our Abby got sick, so that stopped everything in its tracks. Nevertheless, the RV is there. It will give us an opportunity to go to XFL games with our new team here in Las Vegas. And by the way, quick comment, I am a big football fan. You've got to be to go to the Super Bowl, believe me. But the XFL is here, and I have watched a few XFL games, and so far my comments are thumbs up. I think it's kind of cool, and I think actually it has a chance to succeed. So I will use this new toy, this RV, to take Ramona and myself, and perhaps our kitty cats, to an XFL game in Las Vegas where we now have a home team. Yay. Which, by the way, won their first game. We'll be right back. That's our new sounder, It was impossible to get rid of a sounder for commercials altogether. But that other one, well, I couldn't stand it anymore, and I'm sure you couldn't either. And this sounder's pretty good, but it's not exactly what I wanted. You know what I really wanted to use? What I really wanted to use was a theme, just a little bit of the theme from the TV show The Practice, which is one of the best shows, in my opinion, on television, where they have kind of a laser sound on the end. But we called them up and said, hey, can we use it? They said, no way, not a chance. So I can't use that. So this was what we came up with. And maybe we'll find something else, but in the meantime, that's going to be it for a little while here until we figure out what we're doing. All right. I have to welcome a whole bunch of radio stations. This will help some of you who are looking for the program and perhaps have not been able to find it. So I'm going to do it this hour and next, because some will begin next hour as well. I'm going to go through the list kind of quickly. Welcome back, WABC in New York. They'll be with us beginning next hour, and then they'll carry a fourth hour beginning April 1st. KFI, the monster of the West, 640 on your dial in Los Angeles. Our friends at the world's largest store, WLS in Chicago. Yo, Mike Elder. And I want to say hi to David Hall and Stella at KFI. David Hall and myself go back a long, long way. And, of course, at WABC, Phil Boyce and my friend Curtis. I wonder how Curtis is doing. And guess what, folks? KDWN in Las Vegas, Nevada, my old alma mater. That's where it all began with this program. 50,000 watts on 720 in Las Vegas. And I'd like to say hello to Mr. Al Williams and the exciting and enchanting vixen Claire Reese, who's got a photograph in my book, the newer versions of the book. WHKP in Hendersonville, North Carolina. Hello, Art Cooley and gang. Hendersonville, North Carolina is very important. That's where my mom is. And my mom called and said, well, any chance that you could be on a station where I could hear you? And so we checked Hendersonville, and there was WHKP, and we gave Art Cooley a call. He said, sure. So we're on in Hendersonville, North Carolina. And I'm very thankful for it. Hi, Mom. KVTA in Port Hueneme, California. KNZZ, Grand Junction, Colorado. All these joining tonight, folks, or rejoining. KCMX in Medford, Oregon. WKYX in Paducah, Kentucky. WOND in Pleasantville, New Jersey. We'll go over these again. WONZ in Hamilton, New Jersey. WSTA in St. Thomas, the Virgin Islands. Welcome back, Virgin Islands. WQBE in Charleston, West Virginia. WXBQ in Bristol, Virginia. WDOV in Dover, Delaware. Good to be on there. WIGM in Medford, Wisconsin. WJTN in Jamestown, New York. WIBA in Madison, Wisconsin. All of these joining tonight. WGRA in Cairo, Georgia. WCBC, that's a good one, in Cumberland, Maryland. WDEL in Wilmington, Delaware. On now in Wilmington. KGNC in Amarillo, Texas. Spent a year and a half there in the Air Force. WAEB in Allentown, Pennsylvania. WFDF in Flint, Michigan. WFUN, good call letters, in Ashtabula, Ohio. WHYN in Springfield, Massachusetts. WNRX in Tupelo, Mississippi. WQBQ in Leesburg, Florida. WVMI in Biloxi, Mississippi. That's the Deep South. WWNR in Beckley, West Virginia. Check this one out, folks. KGUM on Guam, the island of Guam. That's across the date line. Now, I think they're hearing the show at about 4 something in the afternoon. I'm not sure. We'll hopefully get a call from Guam, and they will tell us. WEGP in Presque Isle, Maine. That is Maine, right? I think it is. WHWH, good call letters. Princeton, New Jersey. WJHR in Flemington, New Jersey. KOWL in South Lake Tahoe, Nevada, KSWM in Aurora, Missouri, WTAX. Tax, huh? It's the season. Springfield, Missouri. Or is that Massachusetts? No, that's Massachusetts. Sorry, Springfield, Mass. WLIN in Lincoln, Nebraska, WRTA in Altoona, Pennsylvania, and WWJB in Brooksville, Florida. Welcome to all of you, and I'll try and go over that again next hour because I know some are joining, kind of late. Now, this morning on the Today Show, the one point that I got to make at the very end I thought was a very important point. A lot of you know I wrote a book called The Coming Global Superstorm that talked about rapid climate change with my co-author Whitley Strieber. And it's going to be a movie, by the way, on TNT. They're working on it now. So that it'd be fun to see it as a movie. It dealt with rapid climate change, and, I went on NBC with Matt Lauer, I don't know, it was a year ago, a little better than a year ago, right about a year. And, he gave me a hard way to go, as I said on NBC this morning, about the whole thing. And coincidentally, I don't know what you would call it, it's synchronicity, I guess. Today's issue, the February 5th edition in this time zone of U.S. News and World Report, has a rather intriguing cover. The cover of the magazine, and I should hold it up for the webcam, which I will do, simply says, scary, it's got a picture of the globe, kind of like the quitting, the globe is there, and across the globe, in big bold letters on the cover, it says, scary weather. Scientists issue a startling forecast of global climate change. This 1 year later, exactly 1 year later, February 5th. So I couldn't resist going on NBC this morning and holding up my book first, referring to the interview, and then holding up this copy of U.S. News and World Report. And I'll put it on the webcam and stop the webcam for a moment, or a few moments, so that all of you can see a photograph of it. So there, I chewed up the first. It's amazing that I even remember with you that it was so simple. There was really nothing to it, but I thought it was so poignant. As you know, I strongly believe that when we die, that's not it. There's more. There's something more. And this email was so simple, and the title of the email was Beginning. That's all it said, Beginning. And the text of the email simply said, my death was not as I expected. Now think about that. My death was not as I expected. That's it. Well, if you have a moment to consider your death, you didn't exactly die, did you? Get it or be eaten. I like that. And I still like this. Beginning. My death was not as I expected. Think what that means. If you could consider the manner of your death, you are aware. Everything has not stopped. I don't know why I like that. I just do. My death was not as I expected. All right. Well, as you know, I don't much like goodbyes. And I appreciate hellos, but please don't. I would ask that you not call and say, "Oh, I'm so glad you're back." Maybe I'll have one person who can do that, and it will serve for all of you or something. But nobody out there, even though all of you would like to say it, I'm sure, nobody out there would like to hear a whole show with people saying, "I'm so glad you're back." That would be boring. So we're not going to do that. In fact, at the top of the hour, Peter Davenport is going to be here from the National UFO Reporting Center in Seattle, Washington. And he has got some stuff tonight that is going to curl your hair. And I probably will do guests pretty heavily for the first week or two so that I can get back in the saddle. I mean, I hardly remember how to push all these buttons, folks, so you'll have to bear with me. There's a lot of buttons here, and I push them all, as you know. So, let's see, what else has changed? Oh, yes, we will take Fast Blast. I think Fast Blast is a tremendous idea. Fast Blast is a term that I coined a whole lot of years ago when I was still at KDWN in Las Vegas. And it was a kind of a thing where we took 1 million calls in an hour, just really boom like that. And so they applied Fast Blast to the ability for you to send me a message on the internet, which you can as our website cranks back up again. Let me see how it's doing here. It's still, well, there it is. There it is, back up again. So apparently Keith has reconfigured and opened the doors a little wider. You know, a website is, the internet, you can think of it like a pipe, kind of like a pipe. And if the pipe is small, only so much water or people can go through it to get to the website. If the pipe is big, many of you can get through. So what Keith has done is just made the pipe a little bit bigger. At any rate, we're going to take unscreened Fast Blast messages. Now, that probably will not occur until we get, obviously, a little further in the show, so don't start yet. I'll kind of let you know when. And we will continue taking unscreened calls. In fact, I'm going to take one here in a moment. So I'm not sure that I've covered, oh, this is interesting. From Glen, New Hampshire. Art, what a coincidence that on your first night back, the entire Northeast has received a blizzard, which feels like it's the coming global superstorm. The snowfall rate here in New Hampshire has been about 2 to 5 inches. That's 2 to 5 inches per hour. And some places have actually received 30 inches and still counting. Visibility down to 0 at times with strong winds. Great weather. And then there's this. From USA Today, to back up what I showed there on the website, or a webcam screen. This is from USA Today. It says, climate change could cost $300 billion, with a B, $300 billion a year. Stronger, more frequent droughts, tropical cyclones, rising sea levels, all of that could cost the world, the USA Today said, $300 billion annually, every year. Can you imagine that? And I heard a story at the top of the hour on the news that they are ordering, mind you, businesses to shut off power in California. So when you think about it a little bit, even though Y2K didn't play out as many worried, look at what's happened since. In January of 2000, many laughed at those who prepared for whatever might come. Didn't they? They laughed. It didn't happen. And now let's look at this year so far. Power outages, rolling blackouts, people mandated to shut off power or $1,000 a day fine, whatever it is. Gas shortages, they're forecasting they're going to be out of natural gas in California. Water shortages. Out of 10 thunderstorms, too many now producing tornadoes. Earthquakes 4.5 and better around the world, never, as we have never seen before. Of course, what's occurred in India. The weather around the world right now, the whole thing is outrageous. I wish I could say something else, but outrageous will have to do. Absolutely outrageous, and I'm sorry to say that what we did write in the book appears to be coming to some degree true. Looking around the world at news otherwise, Ariel Sharon poised Monday for a stunning political comeback. He's got about a 20-point lead in the polls there, and he's a pretty rough and tumble guy. So what's going to happen in the Middle East? We don't know. He's saying that he will negotiate, but only after the BS stops. You know what that means. President Bush, oh yes, we had an election, didn't we? We have a new president, President Bush. Congratulations. I was never a big Bush guy, but he's doing all right so far. He's meeting with Canada's new prime minister and rebutting talk, the Bush people, that Bush prefers Mexico to the U.S.'s northern neighbor. Now, where did anybody get that idea? That Bush favors Now think about that. Bush favors Mexico over Canada? You wouldn't think you'd start out by naming any kind of favorites at all, would you? Another head shaker, a factory worker, I'm sure you heard this one, who got caught stealing from his employer, forced his way back into the suburban Chicago engine plant today where he worked, opened fire with an AK-47, killed 5 people and then himself. And what is causing this to occur? I've never known, and I never will know. Why would people do that? I can understand that people would kill themselves, but people who kill their coworkers and their family and their friends and take out as many people as they can before they go, they must have no concept of a life that is to come after this one. They must believe that's it, lights out, all gone, good night. That's all I can believe, because if they had the slightest inclination that there might be any retribution or punishment for what they've done, they wouldn't do it. They might take their own life and take a gamble, you know, with whether it's a sin to take your own life and how big a sin and where you go as a result of that, but not others. And so many people are taking the life of as many as they can before they go that it makes me wonder how many people believe there is something beyond. And that, of course, is something we deal with a great deal on this show. So there's all kinds of other news that we could get to besides climate change. There is, of course, the whatever in the hell it is, Ginger, the mysterious it. And when I first heard about it, I thought, you know, public relations scam, big time. This has got to be one of the best public relations things I've ever seen in my whole life. It. Yeah, right, it. But apparently there is something to it. It's causing a stir in the U.S. Patent Office, every major news outlet. And some of the people who have looked at it, I mean, you can't, we just don't know, but here's what some are saying. Credit Suisse First Boston apparently expects inventor Dean Kamen's device, alternately called IT or Ginger, to be more successful in its first year than any technology startup in history. They predict that Kamen will be worth more in 5 years than Bill Gates. Oh, that's got to be some machine, whatever it is, huh? And tech guru Steve Jobs remarked, apparently he's seen it, if enough people see the machine, you won't have to convince them to architect cities around it. It'll just happen. That's a quote. Inside.com, a media news website, reports that Amazon.com's Jeff Bezos, it is, I guess B-Z-O-S, characteristically burst out laughing when he saw it, and then later said to Kamen that it is a product so revolutionary, you'll have no problem selling it. So, I don't know. It really is a pretty good mystery, isn't it? It. And I guess we can all wonder about it. Oh, listen, Friday, we're going to do the prediction show that I did not get to do, Christmas going into the new year. And I do that every year. And we do have the predictions from last year. And so this Friday, we will indeed take predictions for the remainder of 2001. In addition to that, we will give you sort of go through the dings and the bongs for the predictions that we took the previous year. So we'll get that out of the way on Friday. Pretty much open lines. Open lines right now, west of the Rockies. You're on the air. Hi.
Well, how are you, Art? This is Sunshine.
Hello there, Sunshine.
And love having that voice back again, I'll tell you.
Well, it's good to be back.
And don't we thank the Lord for Abby?
Yes, indeed.
Came through for you, just like the problems kind of were helped along the way.
Yeah, that's right. I think the Lord or the force or, you know, whatever operates everything around here would be the one to thank.
Right. Well, we're sure glad to have you. And that voice, it never changes. We don't care if you miss a few buttons. That voice will never change.
Well, I am liable to miss a few buttons, actually.
I don't
even remember where they all are, frankly.
Well, you'll have fun learning.
Yeah, that's right. I'll learn all over again.
Right.
All right, thank you, hon.
You bet.
Take care. East of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hello.
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 Yes.
Extinguish thy radio for me, please.
Okay. All right, it's done.
And where are you?
D.C.
Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
All right. Our nation's capital.
Yeah.
So what's up?
Well, I was wondering if anybody would have the audacity to suggest that IT stood for information technology.
Well, yeah, but that sounds like the internet. I mean, information technology, how much better is it going to get than the internet? And would you build...
Well, information technology is everything.
And would you build... think about this. Would you build entire cities around it? I don't think so.
Well, the entire streets in D.C. have been torn up for fiber optic cables for the last 2 years.
Well, I haven't seen any improvement there yet.
I didn't say improvement. I said torn up.
All right, sir. Well, I appreciate your suggestion. I'll take it to heart, but I don't think that's the one. You never know. Let's see. West of the Rockies, you are on the air. Top of the morning.
Art Bell, how you doing, buddy?
I'm all right.
This is Hannah from Eugene, Oregon.
All right. Welcome.
I'm calling you from the remote areas of the woods. I'm out in my yurt right now.
Well, all right. I'm in the remote areas of Nevada near good old Area 51.
Now, Art, there's been some weird stuff going on in the areas of Oregon right now. I'm wondering if you know anything about ghost lights.
Well, you like the Marfa lights, that sort of thing?
I guess. I don't know. There's these things in the woods out here, and there's no swamps out here.
Wait, slow down.
Right.
Things in the woods?
Yes, lights. Lights
Just
in the woods.
Only lights?
Yes.
Nothing
lights.
with teeth?
No, lights floating through the woods.
Well, that's bad.
No bodies
bad
with
enough.
them, no lanterns with them.
Yeah.
No cars out in the woods. I'm wondering if...
well, what do these lights look like? Do they look like a lantern would look?
They do look like a lantern would look. They kind of bob through the air. They move through the woods, and they kind of just dissipate after a while. And
have you seen these yourself?
Yes, I have. I've seen them myself. My brother and I both saw them at the same time. So we're kind of wondering if you know anything about ghost lights, I guess is what they're called. I've been looking in books for them. I got a book by Randall Floyd right in front of me called Ghost Lights.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't really seem like this is what I saw, but nonetheless, it's bizarre.
Do you have you don't have fireflies up there, right? So it couldn't be a firefly.
No, not
much bigger than a firefly, more like a lantern.
Yeah, it's big. It's like a light bulb would be, you know?
Really?
When we saw it, like we actually saw it, we were in the yurt and we heard something crashing through the woods. And the next thing my brother had heard it, or seen it earlier, and he woke up like just screaming. So I woke up and I looked over towards the side of the wall and there was these 3 lights hovering in the yurt. And one by one, they slowly popped off and made a popping noise, like something popping right in a row. Just
like that.
Yeah.
And when they popped, did they go out?
Yeah, they went out, and it was really weird.
That really is weird.
It is weird. And then a couple days ago, at nighttime, I saw what I believe might have been the same thing going through the woods, a little bit east to the woods that I'm in right now.
You know what they might be?
I have no idea.
Souls. Really?
That's true. That's what the book said. The book said that when people die, or if you knew somebody that was
Listen, I talked to a lady, very, very seriously, who actually was in a room with a dying relative and when the relative was actually passing away, she laid over his body and she felt his soul move right through him.
That's enough to send shivers up my spine.
Yeah, me too. So it might be, I mean, that's just a thought. And then maybe when they pop, they're on to whatever's next.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm out here, I got a video camera and I got a digital camera and I'm waiting to see it again, and if I get anything, I'll send it right to you.
Oh, absolutely. Art Bell at mindspring.com or artbell@aol.com, and we'll get it right up on the website. Thanks for the call, sir.
I'm with you, buddy. It's awesome to have you back.
Oh, it's great to be here. All right, Peter Davenport after the news, top of the hour. I'm Art Bell. This is Coast to Coast AM. York, KFI in Los Angeles, and it doesn't get any bigger than that. KFI 640 in Los Angeles. And most of the Western world. I mean, they just really have a gigantic signal. Thanks, David Hall. WLS Chicago, the mighty, mighty, mighty WLS and Mike Elder. Thank you. And all of these stations that I've got to welcome. KDWN Las Vegas, my old alma mater. Back again. The incredible Al Williams, the exciting and enchanting Vixen, Claire Reese. And WHKP in Hendersonville, North Carolina. That's where my mama is. Hi, Mom. Art Cooley and the gang there getting me on. And they said, I think Art Cooley told our folks when I had them call you, and I said, hey, my mom's on there. Can we get on? And they said, well, it's kind of a strange show, but yeah, what the hell? We'll give it a try. So time will tell. KVTA in Port Hueneme, we're going to get fast now. KNZZ in Grand Junction, Colorado. All of these joining tonight. KCMX, Medford, Oregon. WKYX in Paducah, Kentucky. WOND in Pleasantville, New Jersey. WONZ in Hamilton, New Jersey. WSTA in St. Thomas, the Virgin Islands. Good to have them back. WQBE in Charleston, West Virginia. WXBQ, Bristol, Virginia. WDOV, Dover, Delaware. WIGM in Medford, Wisconsin. WJTN in Jamestown, New York. WIBA, Madison, Wisconsin. WGRA, Cairo, Georgia. All of this tonight. WCBC, Cumberland, Maryland. WDEL, Wilmington, Delaware. WGNC, Amarillo, Texas, where there's virtually nothing between Amarillo and the North Pole. WAEB, Allentown, Pennsylvania. WFDF, Flint, Michigan. WFUN, Ashtabula, Ohio. WHYN, Springfield, Massachusetts. WNRX, Tupelo, Mississippi. WQBQ, Leesburg, Florida. WVMI, Biloxi, Mississippi. Isn't this something? WWNR, Beckley, West Virginia. This is one for the books. KGUM, K-Gum in Guam. The island of Guam, which is across the date line. WEGP, Presque Isle, Maine. WHWH, Princeton, New Jersey. WJHR, Flemington, New Jersey. KOWL, South Lake Tahoe, Nevada. KSWM, Aurora, Missouri, like the airplane. WTAX, Springfield, Massachusetts. WLIN, Lincoln, Nebraska. WRTA, Altoona, Pennsylvania. And WWJB in Brooksville, Florida. So, for all other things, including all the announcements I made in the first hour that you might not have caught, please go to the website. And by the way, WABC in New York, though they start now in the second hour, April 1st, interesting choice of dates, huh? We'll begin carrying the first hour, April 1st. So there you are. Good news in New York City. Now, coming up shortly, from the National UFO Reporting Center in Seattle, Washington, to catch us up on all that's happened in the world of ufology, and there has been a lot, is the incredible Peter Davenport. So if you'll stay right where you are, that comes next. Oh, there it is, the new sounder, such as it is. As I said, there was another one I really wanted, and they wouldn't let us have it, so we'll see what we can do about that. And we'll also probably morph into other sounders as we go along. We have to have a sounder. There's no way. It's for the Canadians, which just shows to go you that we favor the Canadians over the Mexicans. Not that we have a lot of Mexican affiliates, so we actually have to do that. All right, there's been a lot that's happened since I've been gone. There's a lot to talk about. The man who knows about it all is the man who takes the reports in Seattle. His name is Peter Davenport. It's been a long, long time since you've heard from him. So from Seattle, Washington, here he is, Peter Davenport. Peter.
Good evening, Art.
Welcome back to the program.
Thank you very much. Same to you. It's delightful to be here. I had a few buttons to learn, too. Of course, I have only one or two buttons to worry about up here, but I've been practicing them on them all weekend and chipping a little rust off my trusty tape recorder.
Good for you.
But, boy, do we have a program for our listeners tonight. you were ticking off some of the stations that are with us tonight, and there are about 4 or 5 of them that we have reports for, reports in their specific areas, and I think people are going to really enjoy hearing what's been going on over the last 9 or 10 months since I've been on this program. It has been a lot, you're right.
Yeah, I know I am.
Yeah. Anyway, we have a couple of special guests on hold. They're in an Eastern time zone, as you well know, and I don't know if they stayed up late or if they got up early to accommodate our listeners today, but there's one thing I would like to do to kick off this program. I think it will serve to just sort of set the tone of what we're going to be doing over the next 4 hours. As you know, I had scheduled a remarkable gentleman to kick off this program with us tonight, and tragically, he died, as you know, just about 9 days ago.
It has a way of happening with people that are going to come on this program. Not that I want to warn anybody off, mind you. I'm sorry to hear that. And I remember you're talking to me about this man quite a while ago, months ago.
Wonderful guy. Wonderful guy. He called me last September, and very self-effacing, very modest, in his 80s, and he said, you know, I have waited 64 years to tell somebody this story. He said, would you like to hear it? And I said, well, Mr. Berg, and I can use this gentleman's name. He lived just about a mile from where I'm sitting up here in Seattle. Wonderful guy. In fact, I think his wife of 59 years is probably listening to us tonight. I said, past sighting reports, we prefer if they're written down, but you sound like so interesting a person, I'm going to sit here and listen to what you have to say. A remarkable story. Year 1936, he was 19 years of age. He found himself up in Alaska as an engineer in a canning plant up there. And he was recruited to build a civilian conservation corps camp just about 27 miles north of Anchorage in the town of Eklutna. I'll bet we have some listeners up there tonight.
Oh, I know where that is. I lived in Anchorage.
Just on the old highway north
Sure.
of Anchorage,
Sure.
you know. And he started telling his story about what he and a friend of his ran into on a cold October night in 1936. To put this into temporal perspective, 1936, of course, before FDR had been reelected. I happen to know that was the summer that the major American airlines across this country were transitioning from some of the old fabric-covered aircraft to the brand-new DC-3 airliner, and so on and so forth. Of course, long before Roswell, long before Ken Arnold's sighting over Mount Rainier up here in the Washington State area. And he started telling me this story about what he and his friend bumped into. They were hitchhiking down to Anchorage for a night on the town on a Saturday night in October of 1936. And hoping for a ride. There were none available. They looked to the south of them as they were headed into Anchorage. They were about 6 miles south of their camp, 21 miles to go into Anchorage.
This was October?
October of 1936.
And they were hitchhiking. It's getting cold by then.
Wait until you hear what this gentleman has to describe. But they looked to the south of them, and they saw this lone light coming at them. In very short order, at first they thought it was a truck headlamp. A truck coming towards them from Anchorage with one headlight out.
Sure.
But before they knew it, that truck, in quotation marks, was hovering above them. And it scared them so badly, two of these gentlemen, that they attempted to conceal themselves in a snowbank.
Oh,
now, what I would like to do, since we have these guests in the Eastern time zone standing by, I think they'll enjoy this too. I presume they can hear.
They can.
The audio clip that I would like to kick off our program with tonight, out of respect for this gentleman, most of all out of gratitude for his having preserved this story for us. I would like to just go to this audio clip and play for our audience tonight what was reported to the National UFO Reporting Center by Mr. Holger Berg, the late Mr. Holger Berg, just a few months ago with regard to his sighting, 64 or more years ago. Here we go, Alaska, 1936.
Fall of 1936, 27 miles out of Anchorage at a place called Eklutna. And another fellow and I were hitchhiking to town.
Uh-huh.
Kind of stupid since the temperature was below 20.
Uh-huh.
However, we were 6 miles at least away from the camp. We saw this light, and we said, oh boy, a truck's coming. Well, anyway, all of a sudden we realized this thing was up in the air, and we couldn't figure out what it was. And before we knew it, it was right above us, and it had kind of a blue-green light in it, and it made a sound. And I never heard that sound again until I heard the first jet engine shut down, kind of a low whining sound.
Uh-huh.
And this fellow, his name was Peterson, him and I dove into a snowbank, and we watched it. It passed overhead, and it looked like it was going to run right into the mountain to our right.
Uh-huh.
When it got to the mountain, this thing went over the top and down the other side. And we said, that does it. We're going back. We don't know what it was, but we thought it was something secret the government was doing.
Yeah.
It was, it looked like it was cigar-shaped. However, as it got away from us, it looked more like a flat iron.
Uh-huh.
You know, it was wider at the back than it was at the front.
Okay. Could you...
Well, I'm sure that we had that in our sights over 3 minutes.
Okay.
Because it was not moving very fast, and it was less than 1,000 feet. And this is the part that really frightened us.
Yeah.
When I think about it, there may have been more than one light, but there was one blue-green light, or maybe a couple of them, either on the sides or on the top. I was too rattled to really, you know.
Yeah.
And my response was to Peterson was, God, dive into the snow. I think it's going to crash.
Uh-huh.
We were looking at the side of it.
Uh-huh.
And as it passed, as it got away, it looked wider at the back than it did at the front.
Uh-huh. Okay.
It was a sound that came from it was nothing like they had in those days.
Uh-huh.
Those were all piston engines.
Uh-huh.
And like I said, the sound reminded me of when a pilot shuts down a turbine. It has a kind of a whining
warbling
sound that finally peters out. And that's the sound that I heard. And I'm sure Peterson heard it too.
Yeah.
Anybody thinks that this is a new phenomenon, this phenomenon of ufology, has another thought coming, because these things have been with us, it sounds, for quite a while.
And this gentleman was how old at his passing?
He was in 83 or 84. He was 19 years of age in 1936. And a remarkable guy. He worked in the aerospace industry up here, I think, for the last 25 years of his working career. He knew which end of an airplane pointed forward, of course. He was a mechanic. And he said that thing should not have been there in 1936. After all, in 36, a modernization of an aircraft was a new type of paint or a new color of paint on your Boeing Stearman piston-powered biplane.
Yes.
And that's what they saw. Of course, we'd like to talk to Mr. Peterson, if there's anybody out there who had a father or an uncle or grandfather up in Klutna, Alaska back in 1936, whose name is Peterson.
There may well be. Of course, we're heard there, and so, maybe. Somebody that age would have totally no reason to concoct a story. My information says that right now, Peter, there's a UFO sighting every 3 seconds somewhere in the world.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that. My position is, based on 6.5 years of collecting data almost every day of the week, we must have UFOs in American airspace virtually every day of the week.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll be talking about what the government is doing with regard to this issue and what they, in my opinion, ought to be doing later in the program. But that's the type of report that we are getting almost routinely now. One of the interesting things in this audio clip is that he turned to his friend Peterson and says, oh, we better protect ourselves because it's going to crash. He didn't say, oh, we ought to protect ourselves because it's going to scoop us up or abduct us, any of the modern terminology of ufology, because in 1936, virtually nobody, I presume, was talking about UFOs. that not even the term had been invented.
No, but I'll bet you they still had missing people.
I'll bet they did too, Art.
So, you know, that's been going on for a long time. But I think all of this is completely, absolutely undeniable. And that's just sort of an older case. I mean, somebody diving in a snowbank, and as you point out, you know, that's what you would think then, that something was going to crash and hurt you,
yep.
and you'd protect yourself from it. You wouldn't say, in today's modern society, with all the information flow we have, this show notwithstanding, yeah, you'd think I'm going to be abducted or it's from somewhere else. Well, that's just as likely. But back then, that's what you'd say.
Yeah, exactly. And he said the lights were blue or green. They weren't yellow. Of course, most vehicles had a 6-volt electrical system back then, so the headlights weren't very bright. They were more yellow than white, I presume. And this was an extraordinarily bizarre thing. He said it looked like a flat iron from the back end. Very similar to the case that you and I talked about, did a program on last January with Officer Ed Barton and Craig Stevens
in
Western Illinois. Remarkable case. But this is an interesting one, and I am terribly grateful to Mr. Berg for having come forward with that story.
And you know what? You're right. Those descriptions are very similar, aren't they?
Yeah, they sure are.
And that officer, sometime we ought to replay some of that audio. That was remarkable.
Yeah, that was a dramatic case, and really kicked off the year 2000. Wait until later in the program when I play the first report. This one for the year 2001. It came from Australia, interestingly, from a physicist down there. I'll be playing that audio clip later in the program, but it has been a remarkable year. I think since I was last on this program, we've probably received and cataloged somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 reports.
What do you think 2001 is going to be like, and where are we headed from here? I know that's an impossible thing to ask, but, you know, I ask impossible things. So where do you think we're headed?
I am one of the few UFO investigators who apparently cannot see future events clearly. So I try to avoid statements like that.
Yeah.
I just don't know where we're going. But given the number of camcorders that are out there and the number of people who are now alert to this phenomenon, I can't help but believe that we're going to start getting some really good, unambiguous video footage of UFOs in the very near future. How near, I don't know.
Do you think, Peter, that we could get a photograph or a testimonial or a combination thereof that would be so unambiguous that everybody would buy it? You see, I don't think we could.
Yeah. Wait until these next two witnesses come on the air. I guess we have a break at the bottom of the hour.
We do.
They, too, saw something on an October evening, although 64 years after Mr. Berg's sighting. Last Halloween night, they saw something extraordinary, and I'm looking forward very much to having these two guests on. I think, in response to your question, Art, that the events over Phoenix on the 13th of March, 1997 came very close to what you described. And I think what the police officers from Western Illinois saw and reported on the 5th of January last year came very close to being unambiguous, undeniable, despite what Phil Klass and the Skeptical Inquirer...
I know, but you and I, certainly I felt that way, and I know you felt that way. But, Peter, I don't think, you know, short of a creature that you could trot out, and I'm not even sure about that one.
Yeah.
You know, if you trotted something out, in today's world, they'd say, oh, no, that's a midget or something in a uniform, and it just wouldn't wash. I just wonder if there'd be any way to ever finally prove it. Peter, hold on. We'll be back, everybody. Peter Davenport from the National UFO Reporting Center in Seattle is my guest, and boy, is there a lot of spine-chilling stuff in.
Want to take a ride? Call Art Bell from west of the Rockies at 1-800-618-8255. East of the Rockies at 1-800-825-5033. First-time callers may reach Art at area code 775-727-1222 or call the wildcard line at 775-727-1295. To talk with Art on the toll-free international line, call your AT&T operator and have them dial 800-893-0903. This is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell.
Peter Davenport from the National UFO Reporting Center in Seattle, Washington is my guest, and we'll be right back with a couple of people who are using pseudonames. Tim and Denise. Tim from Detroit, Michigan. Denise from Signet, Ohio. And they've got quite a story for you. Listen, the website is up with all of the new information, a lot of the stuff I told you about in the first hour, and Keith has it reconfigured to handle higher traffic, so you should have no trouble getting through now, but there's a lot to see up there, so check it out. www.artbell.com. Let's test it and see how much it can take. I don't know. I kind of like it. All right. Now, back to Peter Davenport in Seattle. Peter, hi.
Hi.
All right. Now, you know I'm new at this button stuff, so we'll see if this works. We have two guests. They are using pseudonyms to protect the innocent. Tim from Detroit and Denise from Signet, Ohio. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Then let's rock. Let's see if they are there. Tim, are you there?
Good evening.
Good evening to you.
How are you guys doing tonight?
Just fine. And Denise?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, excellent. Peter, why don't you lead us into it?
Well, I'm grateful to these two people, Tim and Denise, for coming on tonight. It's 2:30 in the morning for them, but they have a story that I think our audience is going to really enjoy. Just to set it up briefly, last Halloween night, these two people and a third individual met very near Signet, Ohio, close to an interstate, Interstate 75, because all of them had seen a most bizarre object that was hovering over an interstate, Art. It was egg-shaped. It had peculiar colors on it. But our two guests tell the story so well that what I would like to do is just go to Tim, have him kick it off, describe where he was coming from, what he saw, and what happened.
All right, just one quick question. Are the two of you friends?
We had never met before that night. No.
Oh, okay. Tim, fire away.
All right. Well, my friend and I, we were coming back from a vacation, and we were driving up through Ohio. We got up to, around Signet, just south of Signet, and we saw, well, at least I spotted what looked to be like a shooting star coming across the horizon. Mm-hmm. It was moving at an extremely fast rate of speed. I mean, I've never seen anything move so fast and be so quiet. And it shot across the sky, and as it got closer to us, we could make out that it was a shape. And sure enough, it appeared to be looked like an egg, and all of a sudden there was an explosion out of the back of it, and it came to a complete stop. And my friend and I, we sort of looked at each other like, what in the world was that? So let's pull off the side road and just watch it. So we got out of the car, and we were watching it on the side of I-75, and we were watching this thing turn several different colors. I mean, red, green, actually magenta was one of its favorite colors. It changed that color several times. And so we were watching. I said, you know what, we got the camcorder, so...
Oh, really?
Well, wait, we jumped back into the car to grab the camcorder, and the battery was dead because I decided to do some videotaping in Tennessee. So I said, aha, I got my still camera. Those batteries, someone left the camera on, the batteries were dead. We're like, oh my goodness, this is ridiculous. So we found binoculars. We got binoculars out, and we were watching this thing from, as I said, from I-75, and we were observing it for about 20 minutes, and we got back into the car. We were talking, and we looked over, and it flashed and shot north up.
But Tim, for this 20 minutes, you're saying it stood in one place?
It stayed in one place, just dancing above the trees. And then it shot up north of I-75, so I said, we could still see it where it moved, because it shot maybe a half mile at best. So, we decided to get back into the car and get in a little bit closer, sort of track it down. And we got off at the Signet Road exit and made a left turn and pulled off to the side of the road, and we were watching it then above some other trees just beyond a clearing. And as we were standing there, that's when Denise showed up. She came right up behind us and got out of her car and said, "Did you guys see it?" And we said, "Yep, it's right there." And we were watching it outside of the car talking, and Denise says, "Well, I'm on a run. I work for this company delivering pizzas, and I have to go." But we exchanged phone numbers. She told us where she works, so we agreed that we'd meet back over at the pizza place after we decided to go in and investigate.
So that's how we have both of you on the line right now.
I'm sorry?
That's how we have both of you on the line.
Yeah.
You exchange numbers.
Yes, we did. We thought it would be wise to exchange numbers, but not exchange stories until we got this reported.
Ooh, smart.
So my friend and I, we decided to continue on after Denise took off, and we got up to this road called Rudolph Road. We made a right turn. We went down about another, I have to say it was about a mile. Made a left turn onto a small county road and started going down in between crops that had been harvested. On one side it looked to be corn, on the other side it looked to be like some sort of, green crop. And we're going down this little road and we're watching this thing above the trees, and it's just staying above the trees. And I said, I feel like this is close enough. We got maybe, I have to say it was about an eighth of a mile away from where it was. I mean, it was close enough where we could easily see it.
Could I ask you this? Peter and I were talking about this a little while ago. In this modern day, when we do hear about, abductions, and we know about alien craft, and we know about aliens, and we are concerned about these things, but we know about them. I mean, didn't you imagine the possibility of Travis Walton happening to, getting abducted or something?
You know what? We were filled with such giddy and such joy. I mean, really, we were very excited. And it was sort of like a bizarre excitement. I've never been so thrilled in all my life. And, we're watching this thing above the field and above the trees.
So were the people on top of that building in Independence Day, though.
Yeah.
Let me ask Denise. Denise, do you verify pretty much what he said, even though you weren't there as long?
Well, I think he saw it and that come in from wherever it came in, and then I was coming back from a pizza delivery, and I was up on the overpass. I had just gotten off of I-75, so I was coming up to turn onto Signet Road, and I sort of happened on it in the middle of all this, about 500 feet ahead of me. There's a little line of trees, and I stopped at the stop sign. I was getting ready to turn to the right, and something caught my eye, and out of the trees comes this thing. This, I have to say, craft, because I'd never seen anything like it before. And it just sort of glided out from this little fringe of trees.
No noise?
No, not that I could tell, although the window was cracked, but we were right on I-75, which is a major, but we're very rural. Signet is like 900 people, okay? And it's right during trick-or-treat. And so there's not a lot of noise, but just the noise from the cars. I didn't hear anything. But out from the trees glides this big black thing. And out of the back of it, there's this glowy energy. There were no other lights on it when I saw it, just the energy coming out of the back of it. And it was relatively egg-shaped. The back of it was, like if you're looking at an egg sideways, right. The back of it was the narrower part of the egg, and then it was wider in the middle, and then it was sort of blunt toward the top. But what I saw was all black, and it had, only thing I could say is energy, because it was a glowing stuff that came out of the back of it, and it sort of backlit the whole thing.
So you actually saw form to it, right?
I saw the thing, yes.
And
the craft, I saw it was black.
How big would you judge it to be? Is there any way to judge?
Yeah, there is a way. I can't do it the way all these scientific people ask me to, but it was like a semi and a half.
A semi and a half.
Long.
A semi
with a cab, yeah.
Oh man, that's big. And
that's relatively large, but it was low. I mean, it came out from the trees.
Well, a semi.
And I was a little bit elevated, so I was looking like right at it.
Well, a semi and a half low is big.
Yeah, it's long. Yeah, that's big. That's big. It's a relatively large thing.
Okay, if she was seeing that form, Tim, then I presume that what you were seeing was the energy she was describing from the rear.
You know what? When we saw it, it was glowing all about when we got up close to it. The colors were changing.
It definitely changed.
I'm sorry?
It definitely changed, because when I saw it with you, it had orange and green lights on it.
Yep.
But when I first saw it, it was all black, with just the energy coming out of the back of it.
And when we first saw it, it was all white and then turning colors.
Well, standing in one place for 20 minutes is a long, long time, particularly if you have binoculars.
Well, and I mean, at that point, we were only really about a block and a half away from it. I mean, because it was just right across I-75.
So right, what happened? They saw it come in. I saw the middle, and then what happened was it glided out and it hung in the air, and it hung in the air. This whole thing took about a minute, which to me was forever, and it hung in the air, and it's still glowing out the back of it, and then it just pivoted like 10 minutes on a clock. It just pivoted toward the north. I think it would have been at the northwest. And then all of a sudden there was this great big flash of light, and it was gone. It was completely total. I didn't even see it go, but I could see the flash of light, which direction it took. And I think what happened was Tim and his friend were up 75 ahead of me, or behind me, and they saw it come in, and then they also saw it take off. So I turned the other way and went and got another pizza, and grabbed one, and it just happened to be to North Baltimore. So instead of taking 75, I just took Signet Road because I was thinking that was the way it went. And I went over the overpass, and I saw their vehicle sitting alongside of the road, and I just immediately pulled over. I knew exactly why they were there. And I got out, and it was like, did you see it? And it's like, oh my goodness, I did see it. Then I got really scared because the whole thing, the thing itself looked very ominous to me. It was not an E.T. happy thing, happy craft to me, you know. It was black and ominous, and it moved like nothing I had ever seen before. And he said, it's still here. And I said, what do you mean it's still here? You know, because I had seen it go. And he said, look, it's right over there by those woods. And he gave me the binoculars, but I was shaking so badly I couldn't see it with the binoculars, but I could see it with my eyes, and it had green and orange lights on it. And here we are, it's Halloween night, for goodness sakes.
All right.
So I said, well, he said, well, we're going to follow it. And I said, well, give me your name and number, and because I've got to deliver this pizza.
Yeah.
So I said, you come right back there. I'm right over the overpass at the pizza place. You come back there when you're done. And so I made my delivery, and they had their thing going on, and when I came back, they were there, and the man that was with him was white as a sheet. And then he said that what had happened, but we just basically, he said, yes, we saw it, and give me your number and I will call you. And that was basically it. I never would have reported it because I wouldn't have thought that people believed me, and they didn't.
Well, you just described what you saw, Denise. What do you think you saw?
I know what I saw.
And
I saw a spacecraft. It was like nothing that I had ever seen before. It had no exhaust. It had no propellers. It had no wings. It had no... The energy coming out of the back of it was something like I had never seen before, and nothing can take off from a dead, hanging in the air, because you can't even see it go.
And both of you would say there's no way on God's green earth it could have been a Halloween prank by anybody.
I am
heavens, no.
really sorry, but no.
All right.
And the thing was that when I saw it, it didn't have any lights on it. But the thing is that people since then saw it come in also, and I didn't see the beginning of this. I just saw the middle and a little part of the end. And it all ties together. And I never met these people before in my life. And
Tim,
that is scary.
Okay, Tim, she just mentioned that the gentleman with you was white as a sheep. You didn't tell me anything about him. How did all this affect him? Apparently, profoundly.
Oh, yes. Matter of fact, we really don't even speak anymore. It's not that we're mad at each other. It's just that communication has stopped. He was very, very, very shaken after the incident because... Well, I should tell you the rest of the story real quick.
Go ahead.
So we decided to stop on this road, and I look over at him and I said, "Well, do you want to get out of the car?" He's like, "No." So I said, "Well, let's just stay here and watch it." He's like, "All right." So we're watching it, and it's changing colors again now. You know, and it says it's above these trees, above a clearing, I said, well, what do you want to do? He's like, I don't know. We're watching this thing change colors. All of a sudden, the center of it turns black, and it looked like there was a halo around it. And it looked like it got smaller, so the only thing that I could think of is that it possibly went further west. And I was feeling awfully baited at the time, almost like I was in the direct path of prey. Predator looking for prey, and I felt like we were the prey. And so it came back to the full size again, and all of a sudden started turning really, really red, real red, and started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It looked like it was coming closer in.
At any point during any of this, did either one of you think about, for example, running?
Well, yeah, as soon as it turned bright red and started coming up our way, we were far enough away from I-75 where I don't think anyone would have noticed. So we both looked at each other and said, we're getting the heck out of here. We put the car in gear, and I looked down at the car, and the car's starting to stall out. And I was like, oh. Not today, people. I'm out of here.
Yes.
So we maneuvered that car around, and we turned around, and we made our way back to Signet Road as fast as we possibly could. And I'm not even kidding. I was hoping that I would get pulled over by a police officer. I was hoping. I was begging for it.
All right, this is a very rural area. He moved away from the town, so he was out in the middle of basically nowhere.
Did either one of you or any of you report this to authorities?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, really? Who?
Yes, and that's how I got hold of
Peter?
Peter. They gave me the number down at the sheriff's department.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of law enforcement just simply don't know what to do with these reports, and so they have Peter's number, and they send it off to Peter.
Well, the funny thing is that I spoke to an investigator down in Lima, and he said that he called up to that sheriff's department, and he said that there was no police reports made. And I said, John, you're kidding me. I made a report. And he's like, well, they said that there was no report. However, we were not the only people, I guess, that night that saw it. There were 3 other witnesses and 2 truck drivers on I-75 that saw it. And so now they're trying to, I guess, triangulate where, how fast the craft was, how far it was above the ground, that type of thing from where the 2 truckers were, because there's one south of it and there was one north of it.
Yeah. If I could cut in here for a second, more witnesses are now coming forward. This investigator that Tim alluded to is none other than Mr. John P. Timmerman, who used to be a colleague of J. Allen Hynek. He's affiliated with the Center for UFO Studies out of Chicago, and he is a very experienced ufologist and investigator. But I have a question for you, Tim and Denise. While you were standing watching that, at one time or another, how many cars do you think passed by that object on the interstate, and how many of them pulled off or stopped to look at this object?
I thought that people must be crazy because I could see it in front of my face, not 500 feet away, but I was a little bit elevated because I was coming up the ramp. But there were cars passing right and left that they didn't see it.
Well, maybe they weren't.
Just didn't see it.
Maybe they weren't looking up.
And I was elevated a little bit, but this thing was low. And the energy coming out of the back of it, especially when it took off, was phenomenal. So I don't know why I saw it and they saw it and why there weren't wrecks on 75, to tell you the absolute truth.
Well, again, I think it's because people don't look up. I've always thought that. Peter, would you like to hold these 2 through the news?
I would indeed, if they wouldn't mind spending a few more minutes with us.
All right, can you do that, you 2?
No problem.
All right, good. Stay right where you are, and we'll be right back. What would you have done in that situation? I'm Art Bell. This is
Wanna take a ride? Well, call Art Bell from west of the Rockies at 1-800-618-8255. East of the Rockies at 1-800-825-5033. First-time callers may reach Art at 1-775-727-1222 The wildcard line is open at 1-775-727-1295. And to reach out on the toll-free international line, call your AT&T operator and have them dial 800-893-0903. This is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell on the Premier Radio Network.
From the high desert, that's me. Good morning, everybody. Of course, Peter Davenport from the National UFO Reporting Center in Seattle, Washington, is here as my guest. Along with, he has brought Tim from Detroit, Michigan, Denise from Signet, Ohio. They shared something out on the highway. Something that Denise said was a spacecraft. We're going to continue with them for a few moments, break, and then proceed from there. We've got a lot for you tonight, so stay right where you are. Peter, Tim, Denise, you're all back on the air again. Welcome back. Denise said that what she saw was the word spacecraft. Tim, was there any question in your mind that that's what you saw?
There is absolutely no question in my mind. I know exactly what I saw. It's the only way that I could honestly describe it is having knowledge. I mean, people believe in things. I know what I saw. I don't know what it was, but I know it wasn't from here. It's it's nothing I've ever seen before.
Correct. And the thing is that unless you've seen something like this, I didn't ask to see this thing. It sort of just popped into my vision. And the first thing I said was, what the bleep is that, to myself, because I tend to talk to myself. When you're delivering pizzas, you tend to do that. But it couldn't have been anything else. It was hovering over 75. And that is the thing. And it moved like nothing I had ever seen. And the thing was that I thought maybe I was going nuts until I met Tim. And he says, and it's still here. And then I got scared. I mean, that was scary because...
That and, of course, your pizzas were getting cold.
Oh, well, that's a third of my livelihood, yes.
I understand.
But the thing was that unless you have seen something like that, you can say, oh, yes, I believe in that there are spaceships running around. But until you see one, and then you realize that so many things have happened that cannot be denied, that come in a line, then you get scared. And this thing was ominous.
So to all those people out there who say, what a bunch of hogwash, what did the two of you say?
I wish I would have had a camera. Now there is a camera in the car.
No, I understand that.
I can understand in a way because your mind automatically rejects what is not known to you.
That's right. That's right. Sure it does.
It does. And I found myself when I turned, it's like, oh, well, that was a spaceship. Oh, what are you talking about? I think I was sort of in shock because your mind, when you see something that you don't know how to describe it because you've never seen anything like it, your mind sort of gets numb. But you know what you saw. And my doctor said, well, it could have been anything.
You told your doctor?
Yes. In fact, I'm sort of upset with my doctor right now because I wanted him to help me with this, and I haven't heard from him. But because I know what I saw, and I want to validate it.
Yeah.
And, some people do think you're a little off, but I am a very rational person.
Well, you sound rational.
Thank you very much.
You certainly do, and you also do, Tim.
Well, I'll have to tell you one thing. I also went to see a hypnotherapist on this situation.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Did we do a little regression?
Yes, we did. The first time I got through the story while I was under hypnosis, but I jumped out of hypnosis, startled the poor man right out of his chair because my legs started flinching, my arms started flinching. Next thing I know, I was out of the chair, completely out of hypnosis and shaking pretty badly. And the second time that I went, I had yet again a real tough time recalling the story. And so he let me out easy that time. But really, what really frosts me is that the government totally in denial about this to the people. And that has me extremely concerned. I mean, this this is a huge event. I mean, not since Moses and the burning bush have we had such a wonderful discovery, and the government is pretending like it doesn't exist. And if you do happen to go say something to them, well, then, goodness knows what could happen.
And they're the ones with all the sensors, all the aircraft, all the radar, all the ability to know that they're really there.
But they deny it.
Yes.
Right. They said that the records. There was an article in the Findlay, Ohio paper, January 8th. This happened Halloween night. Finally, it was on the front page of the paper on January 8th.
Oh.
And with a big picture and everything. They did a wonderful job with it. And they said that all the records, nothing showed up on radar, and all the records have been pitched.
Yeah, they've been destroyed.
Since then.
Excuse me, they've been pitched?
Well, they've been destroyed. Or
they were destroyed or recycled or whatever.
Right.
They do.
Yeah, right.
That's what I said.
So we're left with nothing. But to validate something that some people are listening, this was on the front page of the paper. Granted, it was January 8th. There must not have been too other much news or something, but they did do a very good article.
Well, that's great. But
because of Mr. Tim.
This may give the two of you a little bit of comfort. There was a congressman in New Mexico who did an extensive investigation into Roswell. And what was the bottom line at the end? Well, the records were all destroyed.
Correct.
They were all destroyed.
That's what we're dealing with now.
Yeah, that's right. Peter, anything else?
Just one thing for Tim. If you're comfortable talking about this, Tim, you had some physical sequelae the next day. The next several days after this incident, you reported to us, I believe, were not your easiest days on this planet. How did you feel after this incident?
Yeah. Okay, we'll talk about that. I was wondering if we were going to get into that or not. After my compatriot and I saw this flying carnival, we both developed some bizarre symptoms. I had extreme headache, and actually since the event, I get the same type of headache almost every day. As I said, my friend, he got sick, and we both had pain in our abdomen. And when we looked, our abdomen, our side, it was inflamed and red. And
these sorts of things are signs of, dare I say it, some sort of something that occurred to you that you were not aware of consciously. Perhaps through hypnosis it might be brought back. Dare I suggest something did occur to you?
Well, let me continue on. We decided the night that we got home that we would keep a journal in case we remembered anything, that maybe we had forgotten in the excitement. We wanted to write our stories down. We wanted to keep journals, especially the way we felt afterwards. Just the usual stuff, just to,
Of course.
Just to give ourselves, I guess, some balance. And so the first night back on November 1st, I'm downstairs and I'm watching TV, and I hear a mumbling voice right outside the window. Well, I thought it was an overactive imagination. I'm not going to put any credence into that, and so I ignored it. I heard it again. I said, well, it's probably the TV. So I walked over and I shut off the TV, and the whole room was quiet, and I heard it again. Well, needless to say, it was a rough night sleeping. The next day, my friend came over, and we had our little notebooks, our pieces of paper, and said, hey, well, anything, you think of anything? He's like, well, something really weird happened. He said, my dad and I, we were in the living room last night. Around 1 o'clock in the morning, we heard voices outside. I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, did they happen to sound like this? And the noise, I know this is going to sound ridiculous, but please bear with me. The noise sounded something like this. Really binary sounding stuff. And so I made the noise for Jim. His eyes almost fell out of his head. He turned white, and he just didn't want to talk about it anymore. He really just flipped out. Well, I handed him the sheet. I said, I heard the same thing. He was like, no way. I said, yeah. So the next night, he and his girlfriend heard the same thing, but I didn't hear anything. The third night, on November the 3rd, 3:30 a.m., I woke up screaming at the top of my lungs, running through the house. I have no idea why. I was terrified. My heart was beating extremely fast. And I woke up pretty much every occupant in the house, and what's going on? What's going on? I have no idea. It felt like someone had touched me, and I woke up and I was screaming. And so I laid back down to sleep, and I looked over at the clock, and it was around, about that time, it was around 3:32, 3:33, and I got that headache back again. And usually what I'll do is if I get a headache, I'll just try to breathe and relax and, count to 10, just try to do anything just to relax myself. And so I closed my eyes and I counted to 10. And I opened my eyes, and 15 minutes had passed. And I could not sleep. And I have to say, since then, every time I stay at anywhere, the clocks are always off by 15 minutes to 2 hours.
Well, these are all classic signs of abduction. Right, Peter?
It certainly makes an experienced investigator very suspicious, and it warrants exploration, and I hope that nothing serious has happened there. A fascinating case, and boy, did they tell it well, Art. I thought our audience would like to hear it.
Yep, I'm sure glad you have them, Peter. Listen, you two, thank you so much. The story for you, Tim, Denise, have you had any of this happen to you?
No, sir.
No, but Tim is the one who chased this thing for a long time.
Yeah, I'm the one that had a job. Yeah.
All right, well, I want to thank both of you for coming on, and Tim, I'm sure you know how to get hold of me. There's a million ways. Your story, it sounds like, may not be over.
Well, you know what, I'll tell you what, I have become completely nocturnal since this event. Peter was saying to me, "Oh, you have no problem staying up till until 2." I'm usually up till 4:30, 5 o'clock every day.
Gotcha. All right. Well, look, listen to me. If anything else happens, you get hold of me, and we'll follow up with you. All right?
Well, absolutely. Thank you for giving us a forum, Art. We really appreciate it.
All right. Tim, Denise, thank you both.
Thank you.
And good night. And Peter, hold on, and we will be right back. Like the drums. All right, back we are with Peter Davenport from the UFO Reporting Center, the National UFO Reporting Center in Seattle, Washington. I want to add right here, and this is very important, so please listen to me very closely. The National UFO Reporting Center in Seattle is an incredibly important resource. They operate on donations. Without donations, they don't operate, and so that means that you've got to help us out here. And so I'm making the appeal for Peter. If you would send a $10 or a $20 donation to keep the National UFO Reporting Center going, I would appreciate it. And I know Peter would, and it would keep things going up there and keep these reports coming. So if you can make out a check for 10 or 20 bucks or whatever you can afford and send it to, are you ready to write? Do you have a pencil? P.O. Box 45623. That's P.O. Box 45623, University Station, Seattle, Washington. The zip code is 98145-0623. I don't know if you have to have that on there. 98145. So once again, just make out a check to the National. It's a nonprofit Washington State organization. National UFO Reporting Center. Make the check out to the National UFO Reporting Center. P.O. Box 45623, University Station, Seattle, Washington, zip code 98145. Here's the guy, once again, who runs that, Peter Davenport. Peter?
Yes, and thank you for mentioning that, Art. Those little donations over the years have been very helpful, and paying the phone bill, paying the internet services, postage, and so on and so forth, and I'm terribly grateful to you.
Everything that's needed to keep it going, in other words. So
exactly.
People really need to know how important that is. All right, we have yet another couple of guests. We were going to have 3, again with pseudonames. I want to tell people up front. Chris, Mark, and Rob were due to be here. Rob is not here, but we do have Chris and Mark from Oregon. What are we about to hear, Peter?
In a sense, the story we just heard with Tim and Denise is a prelude to what we're about to hear, Art. I did not want to hit our audience with this case cold. without some kind of build-up, some kind of preparation, something to give them a little bracer, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
The story that we are about to hear from these two gentlemen is one of the most remarkable cases I think I've heard of, certainly since you started your sabbatical back in April of last year. And part of the reason I invited these gentlemen on is they tell their story very well indeed. It is tremendously dramatic. These gentlemen are professionals. They're experienced outdoorsmen. They've been hunting in the same area in central Idaho for the last 20 years. They vacation up there with their families. They know the area. And the interesting thing about the report that we're about to hear from these gentlemen is they reported it to the authorities up there in Idaho.
Oh.
Now, that makes a big difference from our experience, because people who are trying to pull your leg almost invariably, we believe, will not report their story to the authorities, to the FAA, to law enforcement, and so on and so forth.
They might call Peter Davenport, but they wouldn't call the police.
Exactly.
Okay.
These gentlemen did, and just to give a little preface, to put it in some kind of context, last September 27th, year 2000, that was a Wednesday night, 4 gentlemen were at an extremely remote hunting camp that they have been at for the last 20 years or so. In fact, their biggest concern when they called us is they didn't want the location of their hunting camp revealed, lest anybody start using this beautiful place up in Idaho.
Yes.
But they called, actually the first party to call us was the FAA out of Boise, Idaho, to report that they had just received this report with GPS coordinates and details, and the gentleman sounded extremely credible.
Oh, the FAA called you first?
That was the first authority or facility to call us about this report. They had just taken the report, but they had failed to get the name or telephone number, even if indeed it was available to them. But fortunately, the gentleman we're about to hear called us about 30 minutes later, and that is what permits us to present this case to our audience tonight. This is an astonishing case, Art. 4 gentlemen at a camp. One of them goes out to his truck to get some food out of a food locker in the back of their pickups. They're in bear country, so I presume they wouldn't keep their sardines under their pillowcase. And what this fellow, a seasoned outdoorsman, a professional, an engineer, a businessman, saw above his head, I'm going to leave for them to describe, because I can't do it any better than they can do it. Why don't we just go to our 2 guests?
All right, we're very close to the bottom of the hour, but we have 2 guests, Chris and Mark. I think they're probably not both on the phone at the same time. Who have I got here?
You've got Chris, but we can both hear you at the same time.
Hi, Chris. Mark, are you also there?
Yeah, this is Mark.
Okay, good. We've got you both in. That's great.
Yeah.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening,
Peter.
You're going to have to speak up good and loud for us now.
Okay.
All right, everybody get good and close to the phone and yell at us. So, you guys were camping?
Yes, we go there during bow hunting season to do some elk hunting and just to enjoy the outdoors.
And when was this?
It was September 27th. Wednesday, 9:45 in the evening, and
all right, I'll tell you what. Hold it right there,
okay?
Because we're already at the bottom of the hour. I have to abide by the clock, and we'll get the whole story coming up. Stay right where you are. I'm Art Bell, and this is Coast to Coast AM. Stay right where you are, because this is a spine tingler coming up.
I gave you all I have to give. I didn't have to stop. Floating off sky high, not telling me a lie.
Want to take a ride? Call Art Bell from west of the Rockies at 1-800-618-8255. East of the Rockies, 1-800-825-5033. First-time callers may reach Art at 1-775-727-1222. The wild card line is open at 1-775-727-1295. And to call Art on the toll-free international line, call your AT&T operator and have them dial 800-893-0903. This is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell from the Kingdom of Nod.
Oh, it is great to be back. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the program. We've got quite a story ahead for you from Oregon. And they just keep on coming. And I suppose singly you could dismiss any of these, but collectively, I don't think it's so easy. Just keep listening. You decide for yourself. We continue in a moment. Oh, don't forget, on the website, there's all kinds of new stuff. So if you want to get caught up on what I've been doing, and it's been a lot, it's all up on the website right now, and I think we've got the pipe open enough so you can all get in. www.artbell.com. That's www.artbell.com. It's a snap. All right, once again, I want to say this. As you listen to these various reports, and we've already heard several tonight, and we're about to hear another from Chris and Mark, you can dismiss, I suppose, any single one if you wish, but as it begins to add up collectively, I don't think so. And I'm not naive enough to believe that we are alone, and I don't think you are either. Are you really? As I said in Contact, and I'll always treasure this saying, I don't know why, but it affected me profoundly. When you look up at the night sky, and we've got a hell of a night sky here in Nevada, all of that, each one of those little dots of light is a sun. And around those suns, we now know increasingly there are more and more planets that we are discovering. So planets are common. Life is probably common. And if they're not out there, what a waste of space. So the odds are very strong, in my opinion, that they are indeed out there, and equally strong that we're being visited. And we continue to present evidence for your consideration. Here we go again. Peter, welcome back.
Thank you.
And Chris and Mark, welcome back as well. So you were camping. I'm going to let you unfold the story, gentlemen. Go right ahead.
Okay. My brother Mark, he had been there approximately a week before I was, and they had been had mules and backpacked up into the mountains. And they'd been back in there for about 6 days, and then I came a little bit later, and I had a camp trailer, and we use it as a base camp, and it's parked back into the bottom of this deep canyon. Creek runs by, it's pretty narrow, and it's really secluded. And we'd been there for several days, and we came back the evening of Wednesday the 27th, and we got back into camp after dark. It was about 9 o'clock when we got there, and we had taken some video that day with a video camera of just the scenery and everything that we'd seen. And we were reviewing it, and all of a sudden I got this really strange being watched feeling.
Hair on the back of your neck kind of deal?
Yeah, chills. I'd also got a feeling that I explained afterwards to these guys of, like if you were in a totally dark room and a bunch of people had a foot-thick wool blanket and were holding it just right over the top of you, how you would kind of know it was there even though it wasn't touching you.
Yeah, I think that's a primal kind of thing that we share with animals.
Oh, I was glad I had it.
No, I mean that kind of feeling that you're being watched, that
right.
Something's close to you. It's a primal feeling.
Right. And somehow, some way, I knew it wasn't. I knew that it was above me. It wasn't something on the ground or something on the hillside looking, like an animal or a bear. Been in the woods a lot. You kind of get a feeling when something's like this, but this was pretty strong. And I just had the intense feeling. I knew to look straight up above me, and I looked up and was stepping down off the side of my pickup at the same time. And as I did that, I had this one of the mini mag AA flashlights, not a big one, and that was in my hand. And it kind of just the motion of me stepping down off the pickup and looking up, and my flashlight swept across the bottom of a big, dark object that was straight above us, about 200 feet, right above me. And it just, when my flashlight went across a corner of it, it just totally floored me. blew all comprehension.
How far above you was it?
200 feet maximum. So it was.
And how big was it?
When I went out later and we looked, and my impressions to try and make sure that I was, correct, and it was, my estimation is it's about 300 feet wide. It was a big black perfect triangle sitting right above our camp. It wasn't hovering, it was just in the air, not moving, dead silent, pitch black. It blocked out the sky above me. I could see the stars around the edges. It's like if you see the outline of a tree against a night sky. You can see it. You know it's there. No doubt whatsoever.
I hear you. I saw the same thing, a triangle directly above me. And I don't know how we can impart to the people listening to this. When you've seen it, you've seen it, and there's believe me, there's no question in your mind about what you have seen. I have experienced this as well, so I can share the feeling with you. I wish we could find words, maybe we can, to tell everybody what it's like to see something that big directly above you.
Well, if you could get it across verbally what this is like, it would enlighten a whole lot of people. But it was. I kind of fell and stumbled down off my pickup yelling, holy blank, holy blank, holy blank.
Yep.
You guys have got to get out here to see this at the top of my lungs. And when my flashlight went across the corner of it, it knew it had been spotted. It activated a slight, really deep, powerful sound that I could just barely hear. And then lights came on right at the same time. There was a light in each big white round domed light in the corner of each corner
of the triangle, or each point of the triangle. Yeah.
And when it did that, it activated that sound, and those lights came on, and it started raising straight up above us. And when it did that, that's about the same time that Mark and Rob came out, and I grabbed hold of Mark's shirt on his arm and kind of lifted myself up off the ground and was pointing straight up. I didn't have to say anything, and it moved straight up and then started to go, I call it forward because that was the direction that it moved, assuming that was the front. It could have moved any one of the corners, could have been the front. It just happened to move that direction.
Right.
And it started moving up a canyon. We were camped at about 6,500 feet, and this canyon is a narrow, deep, steep canyon that climbs up and goes up to about 11,000 feet, 10,500 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And the second it started moving forward, it quit making the sound, went totally dead silent at that point again, and it just moved very, very slowly and easily up that canyon. And like I explain it, the only thing I can think of is if you take a hockey puck and put it on ice and give it a shove, it moves that easily and that smoothly.
Kind of like gliding or floating, not flying.
It wasn't flying. It was, just like something moving in water, basically.
Well, maybe for it, our atmosphere is like water. Mark, is that where, in other words, you came out, he grabbed you. What did you see at that point?
Well, yeah. Actually, there was another person. Rob was out there when Chris saw this thing, but Rob didn't know it was there. So I'm sitting inside the camp trailer that's just, 10, 20 feet away from where Chris is at, with another person inside, and we have no clue what's going on. I didn't hear anything. We were actually reviewing a little bit of the video we've taken that day.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm inside. Rob, this other person that was with us, was just stepping back into the trailer, and he hasn't seen any of this stuff. And Chris says, "Hey guys, you got to get out here." And when he said that, the tone in his voice, it wasn't like, "Hey, you saw."
Did you hear him saying "Holy blank, holy blank"?
Yeah, and it was the tone of his voice. And I wasn't thinking, because we had 6 mules tied up right there too. And, you know, it wasn't like, hey, there's a bear trying to get the mules or anything. I could tell. I'd never heard it sound like that before. So I'm in my stocking feet and everything, and I just stepped out the door immediately. I wasn't thinking about grabbing a weapon or anything to, you know, fight off a bear if there was a bear out there. And he grabbed me by the arm, and this guy is like in shock. And he just points right up in front of me, right there. So Rob is standing out there now. Chris is in a state of shock, and I'm right there looking at this thing. And it just starts, I mean, it wasn't directly above us when I saw it. It was already ascending and moving away. And so I'm just standing there looking, and I have no idea what I'm looking at, except it's huge, and I don't hear anything. I can't hear any sound out of it.
Right.
And that's what really baffled me. You know, not to mention that, like Chris kind of explained, this is really rugged terrain. We're right where two deep canyons converge at the head of a trailhead, and I'm looking at this like there's no way something like this can be going up that in the dark. And it's not making any sound. It's huge. It's got those 3 lights on the bottom of it. So Rob and I can't remember which one of us said it, but one of us said, let's grab our binoculars. We both had a pair of 10-power binoculars.
Right.
That were in my truck right there, and we immediately grabbed those. And, I mean, this thing's close enough. When I first saw it, I could have shot it with a pistol. So I grabbed my binoculars, and that just took a couple of seconds. And we're looking at it through our 10-power binoculars. I can't believe what I'm looking at. And none of it's registering.
How much more visible was it through the binoculars?
Well, we're looking through Zeiss binoculars, good optics, and it's extremely visible. I mean, I can see everything about it. And it's like it's barely even moving. It's climbing and it's going away, so I couldn't really accurately judge the speed.
Well, let me ask you this. Our previous 2 guests, I asked because one commented, do you both think you saw a spacecraft?
You know, I don't know what I saw. I've never seen anything like it before, and I can tell you what it wasn't. I kind of agreed with what I think her name was Denise.
That's right. That's right, yes.
It wasn't, I know what I was looking at, but, you know, I didn't have the knowledge of explaining to myself what it was. I didn't know what it was. I still don't know what it was.
What about you, Chris? Would you put a name to what you saw?
There's kind of, you get about 3 thoughts that instantly went through my head that, you know, I could recall later, and one was, you know, the size, you know, damn, this thing is huge. The other thing is, you know, it's moving and there's absolutely no sound. And the other thought was, this isn't from here. That's just kind of the first impressions that hit right at that point. It was when my flashlight flashed across the bottom of it, I could see detail, kind of a black, you know, it was radius corners. It was perfect. That was another thing that was impressive. It was perfect in every aspect. All the details of it had rounded radius edges. They were black. It had kind of a gold gray, like suede leather texture on it. There weren't inspection plates or, you know, anything like that. It was something like a well-machined piece of metal. You know, you could see the density.
In other words, almost like it was made in a mold or something?
Yeah, it was perfect. There was the relationship of the size of the lights to, you know, how it was. Everything just fit. That was impressive.
It was awesome. I don't know how to explain it. What I know for sure is this thing was a craft. I mean, it was really there. This wasn't something. I'm not exaggerating when I'm saying I could shot it with a pistol. This was point blank.
Probably would have been a poor idea.
Well, I don't know. Anyway, I mean, I can't describe it because I've never seen anything like it before. It wasn't flying. I'm a pilot, so I have a little bit of knowledge about what it takes to keep something airborne.
Yes.
But it wasn't flying. It was just kind of floating.
I'm with you.
And, you know, we've thought about this, you know, a million times since we've seen it. There was no atmospheric disturbance at all. Everything is quiet. We've got 6 mules there, and they'll pick up anything. I don't know if you're familiar with horses in the backcountry or mules, but if there's something going on, They'll know about it before you do, and they were oblivious to this. And they are right there, and this thing was just like right above them, and they had no clue.
What did after this? I presume you all, once it disappeared, you got together and you talked about what you just saw.
Yeah, Chris was really shook up. That's one of the things that stands out in my mind most about the whole thing. I mean, I've seen him in some pretty stressful situations. I've seen him right after, he's had a bear charge him several times, and, he'd laugh about it. But this, I mean, he was, I've described it before, and, it was a trauma type deal for him. It was almost like somebody just seen their whole family killed right before their eyes. I mean, he was...
I hear you. All right. Well, but you no doubt, you had to have sat down at some point and talked about it and said, what are we going to do? Who are we going to report this to?
And we did that. I mean, actually what we did, Rob and Chris and myself, the other person, he never made it out to even see it. We sat down and we just kind of drew out a description of what we'd just seen.
Good.
Everything jived. Chris was really shook up, like I said, but he wasn't going to stick around that night. After this happened, he was getting out of there.
You were out, huh, Chris?
I was gone. As much as I tried to reasonably think that, what could happen, it just, like you say, my comprehension of what had gone on wasn't there at all.
And this guy is level-headed. He's the kind of guy that if something's going wrong, you want to have there. And he got to see the thing and would probably be a more threatening, position. When Rob and I saw it, it was moving away from me. So when I'm looking at it, I'm not fearing for my life or anything. I'm getting to really look at it.
For you, Chris, it was close up and personal.
It was real close up and personal. It was definitely, no question, observing.
All right. You all hold on. We'll be right back. This is Coast to Coast AM. All night right here, Dr. Michio Kaku, one of our nation's leading theoretical physicists and co-founder of the string theory, a real heavyweight. That's tomorrow night right here. I want to remind all of you that there's a whole barrage of new stuff on the website. Really important new stuff. Interesting new stuff anyway. And a lot of what I've been doing since I've been off, so check it out. It's as close as your computer, www.artbell.com, which is the new single domain name that will get you there. So I suggest when you do get there, you bookmark that, www.artbell.com, and kind of rummage around because there's a whole lot of new stuff there, and I think you're going to enjoy it. And I'd love to get some feedback from you on any of it. All right, back now to Peter Davenport in Seattle and to Chris and Mark in Oregon. These are pseudonames. These are not your real names, you two. Why did you decide not to use your real names? As if I don't know, but I want to hear from you.
Various reasons of being contacted, I guess.
This is new territory for us.
Yeah. Yes, I understand.
And I didn't want anybody, I'm kind of protective of my hunting area.
And you don't want anybody poaching.
I didn't want to draw a whole lot of attention. I mean, we'll tell people. I just don't want to broadcast it over, to people I don't know.
Well, you are doing that. But,
yeah.
but of course you're doing it anonymously. So that's all right. We are actually broadcasting right now. Who did you report this to? And who did you decide collectively who you were going to go to or what?
Well, that evening, try as I might, I couldn't get myself to stay there. And so we drove several hours to the first little town and spent the night in a motel, and which I laid there thinking about the whole thing that night, and I did kind of drift off to sleep. But the one kind of funny thing was when laying there in the motel bed, and when the motel heater came on, I had kind of dozed off a little bit, and that thing came on, and I think I levitated about 6 inches above the bed at that point when that sound came on. But the next morning, we decided, Rob and his dad is just about 70 years old, and that's one of the reasons he didn't make it out of the trailer in time to see what was going on above us.
Right.
They stayed the night there, And when we were coming back out that way, we stopped at the airport. I don't know for what reason. I don't think we expected to see it there on the runway.
Well, I wanted to call somebody. I mean, and I didn't know who to call. I'd never dealt with this thing before, so I decided to call Boise Flight Service, the FAA in Boise, Idaho. And I called the flight service attendant. They give you the weather briefings, and told him what we'd seen and explained the situation, and he was real interested. And he passed us off to the State Aeronautics Division. So I called them right after that. He gave us the numbers. I called them, and I don't remember whether I called the military after that.
No.
I think I called the FAA in Seattle or wherever. It was the Office of the Assistant Director of the FAA. And I spoke to them about it, explained what had happened, you know, and I wasn't sure what kind of response I was going to get, but they were really interested. As a matter of fact, they brought several people into the room and had me explain that to them again.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, there were several people in there listening to the whole thing, and everybody was real cooperative. I think they gave us Peter's number. And then I called the military. Mountain Home Air Force Base is the nearest Air Force base. So I called them. Because, you know, I was thinking, hey, if they're doing something with some aircraft I've never seen or don't know of, you know, I didn't find it real funny.
No, of course not. And I'm sure that you asked the FAA as well if they saw anything on radar. And
Yeah,
I'm
they
sure
didn't
you
see anything.
And the military saw nothing.
Yeah, but they could tell by the way we were talking, by the way I was talking, that this was a serious deal. You know, and so I didn't know where to go. So that's where I started. They put us in touch with Peter. The military, they were real upfront. They passed us through several people. They said, hey, we're not going to, you know, confirm or deny anything.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah.
Confirm or
you
deny?
know what else
That's
they
great.
did?
What?
They actually called us back a couple of days later and told us they didn't have anything going through there. But Rob and his dad were still back at camp.
You mean, okay, now let me get this straight. At first they said, we can't confirm or deny anything. Then they called you back 2 days later and said, oh, by the way, there was nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, there was nothing, basically.
All right.
And
there's one point I'd like to clarify. Forgive me for breaking in.
No, break in anytime you want.
What time did you talk to the military on Thursday morning, the 28th of September, for future reference purposes that I'm sure are clear to you gentlemen now? What time did you talk to Mountain Home Air Force Base?
It was between probably 9 and 10 o'clock, just guessing.
And we're shortly to arrive at a very interesting incident that occurred that Thursday morning. I know you're anticipating what I'm talking about here, but the timing is extremely important because the Air Force responded to your call, and somehow they responded to this sighting report.
Yeah, because Rob and his dad were back at camp, and right there near camp, I guess they were up on the side of the hill, and two fighters came by.
Oh?
Yeah, not long after we called.
A couple hours after we called and talked to them.
Okay,
If
so
it
it
was
takes
even that long.
the Air Force about 2 hours. And how did they know to get to your exact camp?
Well, when I was speaking to them, we had GPSs with us, and I gave them the exact coordinates. I mean, the exact coordinates of where it happened, so they knew exactly where this was.
They knew exactly where to go, too.
Right. And I don't know if it was just coincidence. I don't think so. They were doing a flyby shortly thereafter.
Yeah, what's the likelihood that two jet fighters would come down the same canyon, if I recall your story correctly, go right over the camp, you'd given them the exact GPS coordinates, those are the same numbers in your report on our website for the 27th of September, and two fighters just happened to pass over that coordinate. I think the Air Force was interested, very interested in your report.
Well, and then, like I said earlier, they even called us back a couple of days later, you know, and confirmed that they didn't have anything come over us at the coordinates and the time that we'd spoken about.
You think they were just being courteous to you, or do you think...
I didn't expect them to call back, to be honest with you, so that kind of surprised me.
I certainly would not have expected them to call you back either.
Yeah.
So... Were they trying to just sort of settle you down and say, well, you guys didn't really see anything, or there wasn't anything really there?
Yeah. Well, you know, I think I was a little testy with him when I was talking to him because I wanted to know what I saw. And like I explained to him, I said, you know, if you guys have got something that nobody knows about, you shouldn't be hovering over civilians in the middle of the night. You know, heck, that could give somebody a heart attack.
That's right.
You know, so I basically told them that if they did it again, you know, I don't have anything real powerful, but I was going to take a pot shot at them.
Oh.
They were real understanding. I don't think I scared
I'm surprised
them.
they weren't worried about their fighters.
Well, I can tell you this much. They were interested in what we saw. You know, we gave them a description. You know, they didn't give us a whole lot of feedback back, but they were interested.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the club. That's what I tell everybody. It's a ever-enlarging club, and I don't know what to tell the two of you except, do you think what you saw was from here or elsewhere?
Well, like I told the military when I talked to them, if we don't have one of those, we need to get one. When I saw what I saw, which was a triangle floating, not flying, it was obvious to me that either we have anti-gravitic technology, or if we don't, then it wasn't from here. It's not that simple. Right. I mean, I can't imagine it. Like I said, I have no idea what it is. But it was there. We did see it. It made no noise. It didn't disturb the animals. I mean, it was very, very stealthy. The only thing I didn't understand is how they could sneak up on us like that. Why did those lights go on? I mean, they could have backed out of there. I would have never even known the thing was there if Chris wouldn't have been outside.
Any after effects for either one of you other than emotional?
I'll let Chris take that.
Really? Okay.
There really wasn't anything. There was, when I got home several days later, I was in the shower and I noticed some stinging on my ankle, and I looked down.
Oh.
And I still attribute it to a spider in the bed or something, but I had pretty much a perfect inch by 3 inch L-shaped dots, kind of in perfect alignment on the side of my ankle, but they went away and there's been nothing there, so that was probably pure coincidence, but at the time, you know, it seemed a little strange. But this thing was just as real as it can get. I mean, there's no light anomaly. This is a perfectly clear night, no wind, probably 45 degrees.
It was a real deal.
Yeah, I mean, there was no mistaking a light anomaly, a cloud anomaly, you know, things that you hear people, and this was right there.
Not a lot of swamp gas in Idaho.
No, you know, it was there, it was dark, it was black, it was floating there above us, and when it was spotted, it started up, lights came on, and it floated away till it went out of sight. It was in absolutely no hurry. It went up, slid up that canyon, maybe, I'd take a guess, at 25 miles an hour till it went over the horizon and we couldn't see it anymore.
And you have to see where this thing was to really appreciate it.
You know, everybody will say, how come it's always campers out in the middle of a campsite in Idaho somewhere? How come it's never over New York City?
Well, you know what? That's a good question, because there had been some people there. This occurrence happened when nobody but us was there.
Right.
I mean, we just happened to have GPS receivers on at the time. I don't know if that has anything to do with anything, but they do emit, you know, a radio frequency. I don't know.
All right, well, that's a hell of a story.
It was kind of another interesting point quickly here is from seeing that straight above me and seeing what it looked like, and then watching it as it went up the canyon the next day, drew some pictures. And as it was about halfway up the canyon, just the perspective of looking at it, I knew it was a triangle, but halfway up the canyon, the perspective of it made it look kind of like a giant cigar shape if you're looking at it from the back. And then as it got almost to the horizon and got farther away, this also had a big ruby red, deep colored, about 20-foot circle of light that protruded down from the bottom of it about 8 feet approximately, and it kind of pulsed. You know, it didn't flash like an airplane light or anything, and it didn't really emit light at all. Pulsed like once every 2 seconds or something. And that, when it got a long ways away, and I drew the picture and didn't realize it till I was done drawing it, that looked like the classic UFO shape that you see so often of kind of the dome on top, the little protrusion on the bottom, and the round shape. And it was all because of the perspective at the distance that it was.
If you can get me a copy of those drawings, I'll get them on the website.
Yeah, I can get those. Get them there.
All right. Well, that's one whale of a tale, folks.
So, Art,
yes.
If you really want to find out what you saw, where do you go from here?
I've asked myself that question a million times. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know. I just know that what I saw was as real as a heart attack, and I have no way to come up with the words to transmit how real it was to the people out there, except to bring people like you on who do a very good job of explaining what you just did.
Yeah. Well,
they're here. I mean, they are here. Whether they're ours or theirs, I have no idea. If they're ours, if they're not ours, like you said, we sure need some of them.
Yeah. Makes you proud to be an American.
That's right. That's right.
If it is ours, why are they sending the space shuttle up in a big ball of flame instead of something that's...
And if they're not American, we need defense.
After you see something like that, it kind of makes a space shuttle seem like a Model T. I don't look at it the same way anymore.
Yes, you're right. Well, there are a lot of people who think it is a Model T.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, you two, thanks a million for coming on the air. It takes guts to do that, and it's the only way we're ever going to get to the bottom of this is if people like you do what you've just done.
Well, thanks for having us.
Chris, Mark, good night.
Okay, great story, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's right. Thank you. And Peter, that's the only way. I mean, we have to have people like this come on the air, and if we keep doing it, maybe we will get to the bottom of it. I mean, theirs was the really important question. Now what? I mean, what do you do? What do you do to confirm this or anything else? I have no idea.
Clearly, that object should not have been there by any classical standard on this planet. And I bring these gentlemen on as often as I can to programs because they tell their story very well. In my opinion, there's no mistaking the fact that these gentlemen are deadly serious.
Sure.
They saw something that should not have been there, and they have sufficient experience on this planet to be able to describe it in detail and rule out some obvious possibilities. Aircraft, meteorological conditions.
Mm-hmm.
As Chris said, I believe it's Chris who is the pilot, 20 years experience as a pilot, he's able to rule out a lot of things in a hurry, and he's not been able to ascribe this to any kind of conventional aircraft we have on this planet. Moreover, I think it's worth saying that the Air Force, it appears to us, was clearly interested in this event, enough so to crank up 2 fighters and send them off across that mountain and across that camp. Why did they do it? Those fighters are very expensive to operate and maintain. You don't send 2 of them out on a lark, in my opinion, from my experience. And our Air Force was interested in this event, interested enough to send out those 2 aircraft.
He was obviously a rational professional, Peter.
Yes.
And so people can make of this what they will, but I mean, what he said stands on its own. Yes. And as well as the other witnesses we've had on this morning so far live. I know that we've got a number of really important clips to get to yet this morning, don't we?
Oh, we have a lot of things to talk about. This is just the prelude to some of the things I want to talk about, and most of all, government and other cases that have come to us that are equally dramatic as what we've heard over the last hour and a half that I think will shock some of our listeners, because there have been many cases that have come in the last 9 months. We have a case an audio clip I'm going to play, my conversation with a commercial pilot who the 22nd of June last year had a black egg-shaped object, very similar to what Denise and Tim described, pass within 50 vertical feet of the right wing of his aircraft. He had passengers. He was right over the Rhode Island shoreline, and we're going to talk about that case because in that instance, not only did we get the audio from the FAA of his radio communication with the FAA, with Providence Approach Control, but we got the radar tapes on this one.
Oh, you're kidding.
And it is a fascinating case. that and many, many other cases that we'll be talking about during the upcoming hour or hour and a half, because it's been an exciting year, and I'm delighted to have an opportunity to bring these cases to our listeners tonight.
Peter, has in the time that I've been off the air and that you've been continuing with your work, has the government's attitude or the FAA's attitude, the FAA is pretty good actually, but has the government's attitude changed at all?
Not a bit. From what I can tell, it raises the question, of course, it invites the question, what is the government? It's hard for me to get my arms around it. First of all, it's so big, it is so multifaceted a body now that you almost don't know to whom to turn to complain about things or to address questions or to invite response. All you get is these damned automatic telephone systems. Press 1, press 2, press 3, and I don't know where to go with this. But during the upcoming hour, I'm going to make my position clear with regard to this government. It is clearly time for them to step forward and start telling us the truth about what's going on. But I've almost bent my pick on this mind face of trying to get them to respond. They're going to have to come to me or other UFO investigators to get the story and start coming clean with this issue.
All right, Peter. Stay right there. There's a lot yet ahead, so stay right where you are. From the high desert, this is Coast to Coast AM. From the high desert.
Wanna take a ride? Well, call Art Bell from west of the Rockies at 1-800-618-8255. East of the Rockies at 1-800-825-5033. First-time callers may reach Art at 1-775-727-1222. The wildcard line is open at 1-775-727-1295. And to reach Art on the toll-free international line, call your AT&T operator and have them dial 800-893-0903. This is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell on the Premier Radio Network.
You know, there are some rides perhaps you'd rather not take. You've been hearing about those this morning. There's more to come, a lot more. Peter Davenport from the National UFO Reporting Center in Seattle, Washington is my guest. I'm Art Bell, and yes, I am back. If you want to know what I've been doing with all this time, check into my website at www.artbell.com. The spigot is open wide now, and we think you can get in. So check it out. There's a lot of new material up there, some pretty cool stuff. And, oh, by the way, I want comments on the new webcam and the new enlarged picture. Wonder what you think of that. Peter Davenport, right back. All right, back up to Seattle and Peter Davenport. Peter, welcome back.
Thank you, Art. It's always good to be here.
Okay, I know we've got a lot to do, so let's do it.
We sure do. You know, one of the things that our audiences, one disadvantage they have is they know these people only by their voices.
Sure.
We're going to have a little shindig here in Seattle come Memorial Day of this year. I think it's the May 25th to May 28th. The Seattle Art Bell Chat Club is having a conference up here.
Oh.
And I'm going to be in attendance. I'm going to be one of the two MCs together with Kathy Anderson. One of the things I'm going to try to do is get some of these witnesses that we've had on the program in the recent past, perhaps even a couple of the gentlemen from Oregon who were just on, try to twist their arm, convince them to appear before an audience so they can tell their story in person.
Yes.
And give the audience some flesh and blood so they can see what these people are like and put faces to their voices. I'm going to try to do that and add a new dimension to some of these reports. These people are convincing in my opinion, and I'm sure they are in the opinions of our listeners.
Sure.
I'm going to see if we can convince them to make an appearance so they can tell their story in person. That would be pretty interesting.
All right, and that's going to be when again?
It's going to be Memorial Day weekend. I think that's the 25th to the 28th of May this year. They can get details on a website, which interestingly is called the SeattleArtBellChatClub.com. Seattle Art, that's one word, Art, SeattleArtBellChatClub.com. And anybody who'd like to join us on the Memorial Day weekend up here in Seattle can get details at that website. That's what I'm going to try to do, and I think it would be pretty interesting.
Well, that'll draw quite a crowd, I'm sure.
I think so, too.
Mm-hmm.
So I mentioned before the break, one of the things that I like to do is bring pilots to this program.
You bet.
Pilots are a special breed of people, as are law enforcement officers. There are a lot of people who have special responsibility, I feel, in our society. Let me just go to a short audio clip of my conversation with a commercial pilot, just about a 2-minute audio clip of what this pilot reported to us went right by his aircraft. Let me set it up a bit. He was flying passengers from Nantucket Island, southeast of Boston, up to Grenier Field in New Hampshire, very close to where I lived as a kid, East Derry, New Hampshire. And he had to divert out around Boston. There was heavy weather developing over eastern Massachusetts, so the FAA diverted him out to the west. Mm-hmm. He was flying about northwest, just crossing the shoreline of Rhode Island. He was about 12 miles southwest of Providence, Rhode Island. He looked out ahead of him to the west where the sun had set already, even from 8,000 feet, which was his elevation. He could not see the sun. It was already over the horizon. Mm-hmm. Looked up, and you'll recall that Denise talked about an egg and how black it looked.
That's right.
Well, that was in October of last year. This sighting by this pilot was June 22nd, Thursday night, 21:30 hours. And let me just go to this audio clip. It's about 115 seconds long, and we will listen to this pilot describe what went by his airplane and what the response of Providence Approach Control was when they saw it on their radar screens.
All right.
Here we go. Rhode Island, June 22nd of last year.
It was approximately 9:30 p.m., maybe a little earlier. The sun had already gone down, but the horizon to the west was still orange. And the aircraft I was in had taken off out of Nantucket, Massachusetts, and we were headed westbound, diverting around some weather.
Uh-huh.
And I was looking forward out the windscreen and saw what appeared to be, at first I thought it was a bird, and I reached to disconnect the autopilot to avoid a collision with the bird or just to get the maneuver away from it.
Uh-huh.
When my eye discerned that there was going to be no collision, but the object moved at high speed, at what appeared to be probably 50 feet above us and just over the right wing of the aircraft. And the object was only in sight for maybe 4 to 5 seconds. But it appeared to be black against the sky, no lights on it. And the best I can describe it without drawing is that it was an egg standing upright, and that's the way it moves through the air. And the top of the egg had 3 points on it, kind of like W-shaped. And the bottom of the object was the same way, a mirror image of the top of it.
Yep.
I immediately called Providence Approach, to whom I was being controlled by at the time, and asked them if they had any primary targets on their radar screen. And the initial information was no, that they had nothing on the screen. But just a few seconds later, maybe a minute later or so, the controller called back and said that there was a primary target in trail of our aircraft. So I'm assuming at the same speed, and then he mentioned that it had then appeared that it had stopped and then started drifting slowly towards the east. The radar controller called the object as traffic to some departing airliner. I'm not sure of the origin of the aircraft, but called it as traffic and reported that another aircraft had seen the object but was unable to identify it.
That's what happened.
Wow. What kind of aircraft was that, do you know?
It was a Swiss-made aircraft. It's called a Pilatus PC-12 transporter. It's a single-engine, turboprop airplane, sort of, it's used by feeder airlines for carrying passengers and freight. It's very similar to the Cessna. I'm trying to think of the name of a similar aircraft. I can't at this moment, but it is a wonderful aircraft. I've talked to this pilot probably on a dozen occasions, and his story is exactly the same. The interesting thing about this case is that we got the audio tapes from the FAA of the pilot talking to Providence Approach Control. Everything that he just described in this audio clip is exactly correct. And moreover, it showed up on radar, and apparently the object that went streaking by his aircraft, right over his right-hand wing, succeeded in reversing its course in not more than 30 seconds and was then pacing the aircraft. All of this apparently is visible on radar. There's a catch-22 in the Freedom of Information Act laws, or at least in the FAA's interpretation or compliance with them, in that, yes, you can get the radar tapes, but no, you cannot get the software that will allow you to plot these targets on a computer screen or a cathode ray screen. So we are working that problem.
Oh, that's weird.
When we get that problem solved, we're going to put this on our website so people can see with their own eyes what this object did relative to this aircraft.
Okay.
It is a fascinating story, though, and we're getting a lot of reports, not only now from commercial pilots, but every once in a while from military pilots. We got a report from an F-14 pilot who reported a similar experience over the Atlantic, just off, I think it was Virginia, about 200 miles off Virginia. He and his wingman had taken off from a carrier on a training flight, and as they were climbing out, they saw an object, a bogey, an unidentified object that not even the carrier could identify. And it jumped about 100 to 150 miles, I'm going on memory now, on their radar screens. Both aircraft recorded the same movement of this object just in a matter of a second or less.
Wow.
So we're dealing with some sophisticated hardware. I can't for the life of me imagine that this is in the U.S. arsenal, because the point that Chris, or I think it was Chris, made, if we have this in our arsenal, why in heaven's name are we still building conventional aircraft, F-14s, F-15s, F-22 fighters, and so on and so forth? It doesn't seem very likely to me.
Well, there is one thing to consider, and that is that we have built aircraft that we haven't displayed before, conventionally, and then all of a sudden the Gulf War comes up and we do use some aircraft we haven't used before. But, yeah, you're right. I mean, we're not talking about logical jumps in technology. We're talking about illogical jumps, stuff way ahead, stuff defying gravity, stuff doing reverses, stuff pulling G's that humans couldn't handle, so far ahead technologically that it is hard to imagine, Peter.
And as Denise described during the second half hour, the object suddenly jumped almost faster than her eyes could follow it. That's pretty sophisticated technology.
Sure it is.
And the military, even if we had these, a point I've made time and time again on this program, I'm sure you have too, is even if we have the technology, are they going to be testing it over an intersection of Interstate 75 near Signet, Ohio?
No.
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either. And one other aspect, if you make the jump and say, okay, it's not ours, then what are we doing about it is the next question.
Yeah. You know, we've talked about that too, and the point I make is that it appears to me these things have been here for a long time. Our government can do nothing about them, and I think a question that is not illogical to ask on a program like this is, why is our government not revealing the existence of these things to the American public? And the next logical question, and this is the one that worries me above all else, this worries me more than the apparent presence of these anomalous objects, and that is, what kind of cooperation could there be between our government, whatever that government is, and these objects? That concerns me. If we lived in a totalitarian state where the people do what the government leaders dictate, it's one thing. But we live in America, it's still spelled with a C, not a K.
That's right. And
these people work for us. The instant that relationship changes or begins to appear to have changed, it's time for us to get up off our overstuffed chairs and start reminding these people very politely that they still work for us, and whether the outcome of this is good, bad, or indifferent, it belongs to us.
Okay, there is one other possibility, and that is that they know they're here, it has to be well documented. If it's not ours, then they know they're here. They've certainly seen it on radar. They have better radar than the FAA does.
Sure.
So they know they're there, but they can't do anything about it. And if they can't do anything about it, then why panic the American people by telling them there's something out there that we have no defense against?
Yeah. That argument is certainly consistent. It's logical. It fits. It's hard to argue against, except that the point I just made a few minutes ago is no matter what the outcome or what the value of this information, it belongs to us. It does not belong, in my opinion, it does not belong to a small group of individuals in the government.
I agree with that.
And if we can believe what Webster Hubbell wrote in his book, namely that Bill Clinton approached him and wanted Webster Hubbell to go out and get the facts on two events, the assassination of John Kennedy and UFOs.
That's right.
If the President of the United States has to ask a friend to go hat in hand to government bureaucrats, that tells me that the government bureaucrats, if this story is true, are not allowing that information to bubble up to the White House. That is, by itself, is inappropriate.
Well, lots of presidents, as you well know, have made comments. But if you have another clip before we hit the top of the hour, let's do it.
Yeah. Let me go to Sydney, Australia. Do we have 2 minutes?
Sure.
Let me share with our audience tonight the first really serious, really intriguing report that we got in the year 2001. Comes from about 50 miles north of Sydney, Australia. A physicist down there saw a satellite stop and rendezvous with another one. Let me just go to it. Here we are. This is Brisbane on the 2nd of January, year 2001. Here we are.
January the 2nd at about 21:20. Perfectly clear conditions, full night sky. This is about 50 miles north of Sydney. Well, now, I'm quite familiar with sky watching and so on, and I saw what I first thought was simply a satellite. You know, you often see satellites moving overhead, or perhaps a space station.
Sure.
Well, I had a glance at it, and I realized it was heading from north to south, rather than a more conventional track. And I figured, you know, wow, I've seen sort of my first polar satellite flying overhead, or whatever.
Yes.
Well, now, the object, it looked exactly like when you see a typical small satellite moving across, as you often do when you're sky watching. But it was traveling a little faster, I'd say about roughly 1.5 times the typical speed of a low-Earth satellite that you see.
Yes.
Well, now, I was watching it. There was nothing remarkable about that except that it was heading on a north-south track. But it stopped. It simply stopped, which was, you know, needless to say, probably the most interesting thing I've ever seen. Well, now, I looked at it and obviously alerted everyone and looked at it for about 30 seconds. And intriguingly, I then saw another identical object, or light source, in fact coming in the opposite direction from south to north, about 2 degrees away from it. Well, now, as the second object sort of passed, if you will, the first one came up to this. It was in Orion, by the way. I was looking. It was right in the middle of Orion from my position. The first one again started moving, and they both headed north at similar speeds. And I kept track of them for maybe 15 seconds, and simply lost them. Like, I thought, my God, perhaps I should call the UFO Reporting Center.
And that's a physicist?
Yeah. This is a gentleman trained in physics. He's an experienced sky watcher. He's very logical, very methodical, very good memory of what he saw, and he can describe it in very precise terms, and that's what he saw. We're getting a lot of reports like this. We have for a long time. Generally, I have assumed that in most cases, particularly at night, people are watching a satellite and they avert their eyes from it for a few seconds. It flies into the Earth's shadow where they disappear from our sight, and people mistake perhaps a star for the satellite. They think the satellite has stopped. But not in this case. This gentleman was very precise, and you may recall just about 2 years ago, we did a program, Dr. Roger Lear from Los Angeles and you, about the 5 very peculiar things that Roger and I and about 50 other people stood and watched for about 7 minutes in Laughlin, Nevada.
Oh, yes.
These sightings are being reported to us all the time. In fact, after the break at the top of the hour, I'll play some other clips that are very similar, very reminiscent of this kind of sighting. We just had one reported from Salem, New Hampshire.
All right, hold that thought right there, Peter. We'll be right back to you. There's something I want to get in here, and that is that you are the ones that make possible the reports that you're hearing right now, and you do it by donations. The National UFO Reporting Center in Seattle is a non-profit Washington organization. If you can make a donation of 10 or 20 bucks to keep them going, it would be very welcome and very much used toward exactly what you're hearing tonight. So make out a check for 10 or 20 bucks, if you would. Send it to the National UFO Reporting Center, P.O. Box 45623, University Station, Seattle, Washington, 98145. And I'll give that to you again. It's the National UFO Reporting Center. That's what you would make the check out to. Post Office Box 45623, University Station, Seattle, Washington, 98145. It's your donations that keep all this going, folks. So for me, for Peter, please drop a check in the mail if you're able to. And one other thing, if you have a UFO sighting, a current UFO sighting, there is a hotline number. That's what it's all about, and I'll give it to you. But this is for current sightings. It's area code 206-722-3000. 24 hours a day. Once again, the UFO hotline in Seattle is area code 206-722-3000. Peter Davenport. We'll be right back. I'm Art Bell, and I'll be back because we're a 5-hour show again. Stay right where you are. This is Coast to Coast AM.
Toll free at 800-825-5033. From west of the Rockies, call 800-618-8255. International callers may reach Art by calling your in-country Sprint access number, pressing option 5, and dialing toll-free 800-893-0903. From coast to coast and worldwide on the Internet, this is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell.
My pleasure to escort you through the weekend. Coming up now, Dr. James V. Hart. That's H-A-R-D-T, Hart. Serves as the president and founder of Biocybernaut Institute. That's right, Biocybernaut Institute, Inc. He holds a B.S. in physics from Carnegie Institute of Technology and M.S. and Ph.D. in psychology. From Carnegie Mellon University, has done postdoctoral training in psychophysiology at the University of California in San Francisco. Dr. Hart has earned a national reputation as a preeminent research scientist for his over 30 years of work in biofeedback. He regularly presents at numerous prestigious national and international meetings and is published in leading scholarly journals such as Science, Psychophysiology, and the Journal of Experimental Psychology. In a moment, Dr. Hart.
If I
One has to admit the term or word biocybernaut is really fascinating, and we're about to ask Dr. Hart what it is. If I were to be asked what a biocybernaut was, do you remember that movie in which a number of medical people were shrunk along with their submarine, and then they were injected into the living human body that was ill, and they went coursing around the veins and vital organs of this person, fixing and dodging as they went? That seems to me it would be a biocybernaut. But we'll ask the man who really knows, Dr. Hart. Dr. Hart, welcome to the program.
Art, thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good. So let me ask you, a biocybernaut, that's all I can think of. What's a biocybernaut?
Well, the easiest way to figure it is a biocybernaut is to inner space what an astronaut is to outer space.
Still sounds like what I was talking about.
Inner space being the inner space of the mind.
Oh, okay.
And naut is a Greek suffix
Yes.
that indicates going on an adventure.
Yes.
Astronauts, cosmonauts, Jason and the Argonauts. And it's also kind of a play on words. Norbert Wiener made up the science of cybernetics, science of automated control systems.
Yes.
And in this case, we're using computers interfaced intimately with the brain activity so that people can, in fact, go on voyages of discovery inside their own mind.
Let's backtrack a little bit to the computers interfacing with the human mind.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to a scientist not very long ago who was going to have himself connected to a computer. I'm still not altogether sure how that came out, but to be sure, the first experiments in connecting human beings and computers have begun, haven't they?
Yes, they have.
Mm-hmm. Do you know how much has been done?
Well, you can connect many different aspects of the human being. We're working with the brain activity.
Yes.
It turns out, for example, if you were to put your hand over your head in the back, and you could, without looking at it, bring together your thumb and each one of your fingers in turn.
Yes.
Because you have feedback.
Yes.
Your brain knows where your body is.
Uh-huh.
But the brain has almost no feedback about its own activity. It's kind of like a missing link, which we provide with our technology so that the brain can know what it's doing while it's doing it, and thereby improve.
Improve in what sense? Higher IQ?
Yes.
Oh.
We produce, on average, about a 12-point boost in IQ.
Oh, my God.
With this training.
I'm glad I asked.
First week.
The first week?
Uh-huh.
Really?
And the creativity boost is about 50%.
Now I'm reminded of Planet X.
Yeah.
Do you ever see Planet X?
No.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Not Planet X. It was Planet X, Forbidden Planet.
Oh, yes, Forbidden Planet.
Do you remember the knowledge of the Krell?
Yes, I do.
Well, this sounds a little like that.
Well, and Art, you're prescient because you're almost giving me goosebumps on this.
Oh.
That was a movie from 1956, I believe.
Uh-huh.
It was the first big-budget science fiction movie.
It was a beaut.
And what happened there was this advanced race had hooked up to all the members of their race the ability to project matter and energy.
Yes.
They'd had a million years of shining sanity, and the night they did this, monsters from their ids emerged and went around and basically wiped each other out because they harbored negative emotions.
That means a monster from the inner self.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Exactly. Freud came up with the terms the id, the ego, and the superego.
Yes. The id got them.
The id got them.
Their own id got them.
And in fact, your guest last night, Dr. Kaku, was talking about our being about 100 years away from becoming a Category 1 civilization.
Type 1, yes.
And we've got maybe a 50-50 chance of making it.
Well,
according to the Royal Astronomer.
I should warn you that in the past he's given much poorer odds.
Yes.
I mean, like 1 in a million or something awful. So that was somewhat
encouraging. Well, this technology allows people to do the things to, in a sense, it produces a form of ethical cleansing because people do deep forgiveness work and they let go of sadness, anger, fear, and they move into joy as well as having more creativity, so they're more likely to use that creativity for the benefit of themselves and others.
So improvement that you might get from biofeedback, couldn't it be used negatively as well? I mean, to be honest here.
Well, first of all, we're not talking about biofeedback per se. We're talking about a subcategory of it, which is brainwave feedback, or the professionals call it neurofeedback.
Okay.
But could it be used negatively? Well,
yes.
If any experience that you have as a living human being, you have only because you have a certain pattern of brainwaves. And if you learn how to change that pattern, you will have different experiences. But the thing is, people prefer to move into happiness, joy, contentment, understanding, rather than moving into anger and fear and things like that. So if you give them a choice,
yes,
they're going to move toward the light.
I was told that was a trick.
Well, if you have a gun to someone's head, you can perhaps compel them to learn brainwave patterns, which would be unpleasant. But if you've already got that kind of control over them, you don't need brainwave feedback.
A week, Professor, is a very short time. A week is a very short time. What can you do in a week that would actually boost somebody's IQ by 10 points? I really am curious.
Well, we give them about 90 to 95 hours of training in that week. The days are typically 12 to 14 hours a day.
Huh.
And some of the time is spent in soundproof chambers, listening to a surround sound musical environment where the musical sounds are driven by brain activity at different places on the head.
Sounds pleasant so far.
Oh, yes. At 2-minute intervals, the sounds stop, and you open your eyes and see scores that light up on the screen that tell you how much energy your brain put out at different locations.
Really?
And they're coded by color. So if you've set a new high for the day, that score will be green.
It's
so
measuring.
You don't have to remember the number.
All right, now it's measuring your brain's energy?
Energy, yes. Actually, it's the square root of energy. It's the amplitude, but yeah, it relates directly to energy.
What are you actually measuring?
The alpha waves.
The alpha waves. Okay, so...
And they were the first brainwaves discovered. They were discovered by Hans Berger, an Austrian psychiatrist, in 1908. The reason he went looking for them, he'd been involved as a soldier in some war, and his horse fell on him, he almost died, and his sister back in Austria knew instantly all the details of what had happened to him. So when he got home, I think she had this all written down, all of a sudden he realized that there is something to ESP. He went looking for it. But using the primitive technology of the day, all he could discover were the biggest brainwaves, alpha. That's why he called them alpha. They were the first ones found. They're neither the fastest nor the slowest, but they're usually the biggest. And he kept it a secret for 10 years because he thought it was the basis of ESP, and he studied it and researched it.
No kidding. No
Finally
kidding.
published in 1918.
Okay, alpha wave. So you give a person during this feedback so that they know when they're in an alpha wave state. Is that what it is about? And so when you know you're in an alpha wave state, you identify what you're feeling and doing to be there, and you then do it more frequently, and you're able to build the power or the amount of alpha waves.
Yes, exactly right. And those alpha waves correlate, depending on where on the head they increase, with reductions of psychopathology, in other words, anxiety, paranoia, depression, schizophrenia, all of these negative personality traits. Each one of them can be reduced by learning a pattern of alpha increases, with a different set of sites on the head. It's like a map.
Doctor, wouldn't that suggest that there would then perhaps be treatment for some psychological disorders with this?
Absolutely.
Yes.
In 78, I published a paper in Science which demonstrated that you could take people at the extreme high end of anxiety,
yes,
give them alpha feedback training,
yes,
and they could end up below average in anxiety.
My goodness.
This was thought to be
And that was published
possible.
in Science.
In Science magazine, yeah.
And
7/7/78.
And this was what you just described. Was that the way you did it?
The technology has continuously improved.
But then, is it the way you did it by?
Yes, by teaching people to increase their alpha brainwaves. Now, to do this really quickly, we embed the feedback in another process, which involves depth interviews. People interact with a computerized mood scale program, which asks them to describe both before and after their feedback training, how they feel in relationship to hundreds of adjectives. They're wired up while they're doing this,
right?
And the computer can tell that if they give an answer which they might think is true, let me tell you a story. We had a CEO of $1 billion corporation in the training. He was in the training with 4 people, and on the end of the first day, when they came out of the chamber, the first thing they do is they tell their stories, they get interviewed, they get some coaching, and then we go and review their mood scales. Well, when I opened his mood scales, I saw that the top of the list, the word was